this good? Is this good right here? This look good?
It's perfect.
Great.
All right, then. My guy Ross, what's going on, man?
What's going on, man? I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I was
Very
really interested to
stoked.
get you over, and
Yes.
it's weird because you're kind of like in a little bit the same field as our guy Luis that
Mhm.
produces this for me, and that we've kind of done a similar episode, but I feel like there's also a lot of different things that I've seen that you've been into over the years that make it different, and then
Yeah.
you guys' careers and paths have taken you different routes for sure, and I'm always interested to hear a new story too.
Yeah.
So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think that's cool as well. But we'll get into it right off the jump. Give us a little basic intro of your background, kind of like where you came up and family stuff like that. Even
Okay.
maybe if you had a kind of artistic or entrepreneur bloodline in your family or whatever. But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
give me some of that.
Okay. So like start from the beginning.
Yeah.
kind of thing, right?
Just a
Okay.
quick one, just to give people an idea,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
because, like I said, I always say a lot of people that come on, your audience when you watch will know who you are.
Right.
But
right.
my audience or listeners that just come new to the podcast will have no idea
Totally.
probably who either of us are. So.
Yeah. No, for sure. Also, I'll preface everything with I like to talk a lot.
It's even
So,
better because I do too.
If
That's
I'm
why I
answering a
have this.
question, if I'm answering a question, you're like, yeah, dude, I got it. Like you said it, just be like, nice, man. So what's next? And then I'll move on.
Gotcha.
But so yeah, my I come from a very small town. Not originally from, like, now I live in Columbus, and not originally from Columbus. From a very small town. It's like a little over an hour away. And I think realistically from like a young age, I was always had some artistic thing going on. My big thing when I was a kid was drawing. I, for some reason, had a knack for drawing, and I would just sit and draw all the time. And that kind of like continued to take shape in like kind of a bunch of different ways, really, where I would at first just like copy things, that I would see. You'd look at other comics or magazines or whatever and just draw the version of that you want to draw. Then that kind of gradually turned into more of like me making my own stories, right? Where I would then draw my own characters and all that sort of stuff. Where that comes from, I honestly don't know. I know, like, my dad was like decent at drawing, and one of my grandmas was decent at drawing, but kind of like how you asked, like, is there an entrepreneurial background or a super artistic driven background in the family? There like oddly isn't. There's not really there wasn't like a driving force where I was like, I want to be like them when I get older, or anything like that. So it very much was just kind of an odd natural thing. But I know that for some reason the drive to make my own stories and be a storyteller was kind of always there, because like I said, I kind of immediately moved into, okay, I want to make my own stories, draw my own characters, do all this sort of stuff. And that actually took shape enough into, I think technically my first business venture was in like 4th grade.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So really,
yeah. So what that was basically was, I would draw and I would make up all these stories, and I somehow got like a group of friends together. There was like 4 of us or something. And basically it was like each person I found, like I don't know why I was thinking of this in 4th grade, but I was like, okay, I need somebody to take care of every level of work. So I'll make the stories and draw, and you put the pages together and staple them. And then like one of the kids' parents had like a laminator like machine at home. And for some reason I thought that was really cool. So I was like, and then after we staple them together, you can take them home, you laminate the cover in the back, and then bring them back. And then it's your, like the other person's job to go and try and sell it. So
lemonade guy would felt the worst about his
probably,
position.
yeah, he definitely was like, I just take it home and like put some clear stuff on it, like that's it. But I remember, I think I sold like, I think it was like 3 different comics. And literally, like, these are, I mean, we're in 4th grade. Like, no one has an actual income. It's these kids, like, lunch money and stuff.
Right, for sure.
That they're giving to me, and then someone's bringing back to me. And then literally, I would pay out the employees. Like, I'd be like, okay, well, I get this amount. Like, if they would give us, like, $5, I'd be like, all right, well, I take 3. And then I'll give the rest of you guys a couple quarters. And so that ended up happening for, like, a couple weeks. But then what spawned from that was a new rule at our school. Because obviously teachers caught on to that and were like, you can't sell things and take these other kids' money. And so the business got shut down.
Right. Right. Well, you
Business
know how
got
that
shut
is,
down.
because there was probably kids in the lunch line like, actually they're at the register like,
Yeah, like
I actually used my money buying this comic from this guy Ross. Like,
exactly. Like I got this new comic, but I can't eat today.
right.
So that's probably an issue. But yeah, somehow as a child started my first business in 4th grade. But outside of that, there was never like it's a weird thing to talk about, because I feel like I've often had inner thoughts about it of like, why did I take an artistic route with things? You know what I mean? And luckily my family was for sure supportive in that. They would buy me the sketch pads, they would buy me the whatever that stuff is that I needed to create. So it wasn't one of those stories where it was like I had a dream and then my family was like, don't do that, be a lawyer or whatever.
Right.
So luckily it wasn't that background.
Is that maybe because we have white parents and they're like, oh yeah, like go you. You
yeah,
know what
they're
I mean?
just
It's
like, yeah,
usually when you hear that story, it's like immigrant story or something like that, where it's
Right.
like they said, no, you need to be a doctor or something. It's like, no, I want to be a comedian.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, you'll be disowned.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm sure that's a part of it. If they were, luckily just very much just like, yep, cool, keep creating and
Sweet,
keep
man.
doing all that stuff. But again, it's I think that was always creating and drawing and all that sort of stuff was almost like a safe haven for me, because like if I were to like point out like a bad side of like the come up of like growing up, it was like I had a very like divided family. So like I was born to like very young parents, like in high school parents.
Okay.
And basically like they were never like officially together, right? They were never married. There wasn't like anything like that. So always had split parents, always had two sides of the family. And then when I was very young, my dad finds me a stepmom. My mom finds me a stepdad. Stepdad was great. Stepmom was not great at all. Very like bully mentality, just a very negative person. Wasn't ready to be a parent at that point in time. So from a super young age, I feel like that was like, I want to say like 2 or 3, like real young, until I was like 12 or 13. I had this person in my life that was like, if there was anybody that was like, I'll support you in whatever you want to do, as long as like I think it's right.
Oh, gotcha.
That was unfortunately the person. Gotcha. So kind of the point that I was making was like, I think creativity and having that outlet was a little bit of my like safe space, if you will.
Yeah. And one of the things I've noticed recently, because I actually had like an incident with some family kind of like throwing some shade at me doing this recently. And it was like, one of the things I noticed too is like, if it's something you're really interested in, it's like, to me, that's the motivation. You know what I mean? It's drive. And I guess even if you were younger, in some ways too, I hear where people will say that's where it's like, it's almost like the rebel in you too wants to say like, oh, okay, that's what you don't want me to do, but you're a dick. Like, oh, that's exactly what I'm going to do then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, like luckily for me, I guess it was a positive thing that my rebel side was like, I'm gonna go draw a bunch, like I'm gonna go create all these things. But yeah, I definitely do think like there was kind of a mixture of those things of like, I want to do my own thing, but this is also the quote unquote escape from this like weird life setting that I sort of have.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
And no, it makes a ton of sense, man. It's a great explanation. So nowadays, what would you say is your title now? And if someone that is just doesn't know you from Adam is saying, what does he do? What's his thing now?
So it's odd because the list of things that I do is gigantic.
Ever growing, maybe?
Yes. Honestly, ever growing, because I want to try and do nearly everything. But if I were to just sum it up in a simplified way, I think it's art director.
Okay.
And that kind of spans over like all different sides of, actually being, a video director and stuff like that. And then moves over into the side of like marketing and promotions and branding and stuff like that. So I feel like the easy sum up is art direction. But again, I do that through, the physical tools of, I have a camera in my hands a lot of the time. And, I do that through, photo and video and all that sort of stuff. And then there's a whole other side of it that even spawning from like the childhood story of like always wanting to tell stories and everything. I think that the reason I moved into directing things was from that storyteller mentality,
Gotcha.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the storytelling thing is huge, man. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough on here, but it's like, that's what I've learned in so many different ways is a big thing for like me doing the talking, the guests coming on and saying their part, someone creating with video, someone creating through music, whatever it is. It's like, I hear more and more where people say like, when you can get to the point where when you're explaining something or your lyrics of a song or your picture or video visual put someone in that setting with you down to a T of like, oh, they smell this, they hear this, they you know what I mean? If you can kind of weave those things in, that's the things that kind of take the storytelling to the next level.
Right. And I think that's a lot of my attraction to the marketing side of things, right? Because like, you know, in a rudimentary explanation, sure, I'm a photographer, I'm a videographer, whatever. But usually when I'm doing those things, I'm doing it with something else in mind. It's what story am I capturing? What story are we trying to tell? How is this going to be branded? How is it going to be promoted? How is like everything I do intertwines with those things in mind? Which I guess is, you know, why I can kind of sum it up as like art direction. I think right. It sort of leaves those doors open.
Okay. So then how exactly did you get your start as far as really trying to make this a career, make this a business and getting rolling with, was it camera first and going from there, or where was the start as an adult or as a really, even if it was pre-adult, but just really starting to try to make some real money off it or think that this is something you could do? Yeah.
So I won't pretend like the comic book business in 4th grade was the start.
Like that was it. It just started rolling from there. It was
just from
Millionaire by 10.
Yeah. No. So like the actual start, it oddly enough, as often as I have a camera in my hands now, it did not in any way start with the camera whatsoever. It actually started from when I got introduced to like the music industry, realistically, because that's like a whole side of, you know, things that I have my hands in a lot. And that started just from joining bands. So, you know, I think I was, I don't know, like sophomore, junior in high school. And of course, like I think at that point in time in your life, you know, things like sitting and drawing most of the time will take like a back seat, and it's more like, of course, at that time it's like video games, internet's a thing that's coming up. And then it's like, you know, girls, music, all that.
Right.
Well, there was a band, like a local band in the town that I was from, which is like, if there's a band in my town, like they're local celebrities, right? Because nobody does stuff like that, right? No one does that where I'm from. So my cousin was the drummer. Long story short, I get invited to come join this band. I get invited strictly because I had dabbled in playing guitar before. So that means that I can play bass decently. If I can sort of play guitar, I can also sort of play bass.
That's how that works?
Yes, pretty much. If you ask, there's a lot of band dudes. If you're like, hey, is your bassist a real bassist or did they sort of play guitar? Most of the time it's they sort of played guitar.
Gotcha.
So I get brought in as the sort of play guitar guy. And I also like had like a passion for music. Like I did love music. And at that point in time, I'm into, you know, I'm hitting that level where it's like I have all these favorite bands and I love all that sort of stuff. So I also wanted to sing. So joined this rock band where now I'm going to be the bassist and the singer. I quickly noticed that I took it a lot more seriously than everybody else did. Like if a member would leave the band, I was the guy that was like, you guys, like, we got to make a professional write-up to post on Facebook and tell them why they left. And they're like, no one in our town cares that like the other person they know just stopped being in the band. But I'm like, we got to make a press release though. Like that's how this works. So I noticed I took it super seriously. After the band thing ended is when I was like, okay, I pay attention a lot to the marketing and promotional side of how artists brand themselves. So from there, I helped start this like basically like an online promotional agency. It was pretty much just like a Facebook page that like back when Facebook actually was like completely organic, there was no paid ads. It was like if people was into it, they were into it and they're there, right? So we have this, you know, online promotions page that's sort of like a press outlet for independent artists in Ohio or like surrounding states. And so I'm doing that and I'm getting deeper into that and I'm just realizing like, okay, like one, I'm meeting all of these other independent artists and these independent bands and all this sort of stuff. And cool, I'm cross promoting with them and I'm helping them get the word of their release out there and everything. But I then kind of noticed the next layer of it was, okay, well, I'd really like to talk to them about what their artwork looks like for the next song, or how they're going to go about releasing the next song, or what the album marketing plan is, and all that sort of stuff. And I had no reason to want to do that. There wasn't that wasn't even my goal of I want to be an A&R person for a label, or I want to be a whatever. It just continued to kind of naturally flow in that direction, to where I was going out of my way to go message a band, some band dude of hey, we just did an article on your upcoming album. What are your plans for that? And then usually the answer would be we don't know. We're trying to find a designer. We're trying to find a this. So I was like, well, I can do those things, and I'd really love to help.
Right. That's one of the cool things about when people hit you up like that. It's it's weird that if it's something you're getting into, you kind of feel oh, I'm being Mr. Sales pitchy,
Right.
Annoying people with this and that. But at the same time, it's maybe you've seen some of it, and I've definitely seen some of it with us starting this. Is sometimes when the people hit you up, it's yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for, or what we'd like to do right now.
I think a lot of the times, specifically with the example of independent artists, a lot of the times they don't know what they're looking for, and they don't know what they need. And I do think a lot of people who are trying to start a company or start a brand and stuff also are like that. I think it's they know the random puzzle pieces they need, but it's having somebody there to really connect the puzzle pieces and be this is how, or here's the piece you were missing. I think a lot of people don't know that they need that.
Where do you think you picked up a lot of that? Because I heard you say your thoughts were on that right from the comic in elementary school thing,
Right.
where it's where do you think you were picking up? We're going to need someone to do this, and that, and planning it out like that. Because that, to me, that's something that we had to figure out after the fact, and have more so. It's just been Luis is just I'm going to learn the next thing. I'm going to learn the next thing we need. I'll learn the next thing we need. And
Right.
I'm I'll try to help a little bit. But it's where do you think you picked up that it would be key? Because I feel you basically just gave away a piece of why early on there was a sign that you could do something like this, or that you would be successful in this.
Right. It's hard because, like I said, I've tried to think about that often. I'm where did this come from? Why did this start? And I don't want this to sound like a weird, conceited thing or something, but I feel like it was just a feeling that was always there.
Okay.
Because even growing up, and more specifically kind of in the era that we're talking about of starting to join bands and notice all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. What year did you graduate? Not to interrupt you, but
I graduated in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I noticed that I kind of always paid extra attention to how things were done. Not so much in the technical aspect, but what is the story they're trying to tell here? What is the, something I've only recently come to remember is that growing up, one of my favorite things was if there was a movie or a show or something that I really liked, a lot of the times horror movies, I would love to get the DVDs of them, because they had audio commentary and behind the scenes footage that I could then dig into and find out and see how this was made, or listen to the director talking on the DVD commentary about the logic behind the scene, or what they were trying to say with this, or all that sort of stuff. So there was always something there that I was I want to know every aspect of how this is made, not even necessarily from a technical side.
Right. It sounds like it was definitely just in your DNA, man. That's
right.
That's very it was almost innate for you. You know what I mean?
Right. Because if you think about it, I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like kids' first thing to go to for a movie is what's the behind the scenes commentary like?
Yeah, everything you just said is when I was a kid, I could care less about any of that stuff.
Right.
As I got older, I would kind of be oh man, some extra scenes or some extra things, and or if you started to get older and start to know who some of the actors were, and then you get to see them kind of how they might act off camera.
Yeah,
that would be kind of interesting as a fan.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah, but my thought process was never as in oh, I want to know how this works. Oh, I want to hear this director explain this. And I was someone who loved television and movies when I was a kid. It's crazy because it's to me a lot of parenting and a lot of things throughout the years have kind of down talks, you know what I mean? Don't consume too much of this and this and that, whatever. And that was big, I think, especially when I was a kid, because it was video games were just starting to come along when I was a kid.
Yep.
And then, at that time, it was more so people saying, oh, get them out from in front of the TV. They're going to be blind and dumb and this and that and blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was as I got older, I realized like so much of what I have like learned or ways of dealing with people, especially the way with the way I talk to people, interact with people, and just knowing random things. Like I'll randomly get a question from my daughter about who knows what, because she's 3, and they ask the most off the wall questions.
Right.
And I'll say, oh, that's this and that, whatever. And it's not like I'm not even a super intelligent guy or a well-read guy. I'm not a big reader or anything.
Yeah.
But I'll answer the question, and my wife would just be like, well, where did you know that from, or something? I'll just be like, this one movie, this one time. You know what I mean? Or I used to watch this TV show. They used to talk about this a lot. So I've always been somebody like, it always interests me, and I was always a kid that drank way too much pop when I was a kid. So
that's still me. So.
I was up till like 2, 3 in the morning on school nights watching the weirdest movies on TV, or watching Seinfeld or some crazy sitcom that nobody hardly watches anymore. And a lot of just what I picked up and learned was just from stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of the same thing in my case, where it's like I think I would just take away so much from movies and shows and all that sort of stuff, because the other thing that I also paid a lot of attention to was like the characters and the story that was being told, right? So it's not so much like the physical, like how did they make this scene, but what was the reasoning behind it? And I think that like paying attention to storytelling and character development and all that sort of stuff was just a thing that I just naturally kept locking up in my brain. And like a big part of that too, like this is a strange thing that I hardly ever talk about, I feel like. But a huge part of something that has taught me a lot about like marketing and branding, character development, storytelling, is pro wrestling, oddly enough. So
I feel like I heard someone mention that before, but go ahead.
Yeah. So
yeah, because he's a big wrestling guy. Probably is Gary Vee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, not a bad thing to compare to.
For sure. Right.
But from like a young age, like I became a fan of pro wrestling. So, obviously pro wrestling has this stigma to it of like, oh, it's 2 big oily dudes yelling at each other for a championship belt, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, I get it. There's the physical part of it, which totally can be cool, whatever. What I was always attracted to was the people playing these characters and the stories that they were telling and how they were being told, or how they would market this new character. Because it's a TV show, right? It's theater. There's a lot more realistic parts to it than people know. But at the end of the day, it's theater. But for some reason, like I attracted to that hugely on like the story part, where I want to find out like, okay, what is this person's motives? Or, okay, this character, a easy example is like, there's a character in wrestling who is like this, they can't say it because they're like a publicly traded company television show, but he's a cult leader, right? He's this cult leader from like the Bayou. And that's everything that his character revolves around. And he kind of speaks in riddles and all this sort of stuff. And I'm not stoked to see that character because like, oh, I want to see him beat somebody up. I'm stoked because I'm like, I want to know more about this character. When he's talking about, where he came from or why he leads these followers, or, why this or there, because a lot of it too is like, there's a lot of, art direction in pro wrestling, because not all the show takes place inside of a ring. A lot of it's vignettes and all these storylines and stuff. So I would watch all these storylines and all these backstories of these characters where I'm like, this is so cool, because it's kind of like mini movies.
Right. And it makes a lot of sense too, because I never really considered it from someone who wasn't really ever a wrestling fan. Like for a little while when we were a kid, we got into it just off, we really liked one of the video games, like WWF In Your House or something like that we got into. And then but it makes sense too, because it's like, for something to be not real or fake, however you want to word it, you know what I mean, to be real, but for it to be fake but still get the following that it does,
exactly,
that's where now you explaining that, or you saying that, makes a lot of sense to me. Is it because they're playing to every different type of audience, to you that wanted the story, to the girls that wants to see the guys with the big muscles, to the guys that want to get big like those guys and see the muscles, to whatever else goes on, the drama, so the people that latch on to drama and the arguments and the fights and stuff like that. So it's making a lot of sense with you saying that.
Yeah, and that was just a strange thing that I attached to, because again, it was like another form of movies to me. It was this, okay, like, what are the story arcs? What's the storylines? How's this going to end up? Like, yes, it all ends with them fighting in a ring.
Right.
But everything that leads them there was so intriguing. And I think, again, that's how I looked at a lot of stuff. Like, again, nobody looks at pro wrestling and is like, oh my God, the story. They're like, oh, they either like it and they're like, hell yeah, beat them up.
Right,
or they're
right.
like, that stuff's stupid, dude. Why are you going to watch that?
Right.
Where I'm looking at it from like, yeah, but like they've been writing this story for 6 months and like the blow off is at the next pay-per-view. And I think this is going to happen in the story arc. Cause like I would watch interviews with the people, with the wrestlers out of character.
Oh, okay.
Just like that was my DVD commentary to the movie. Right.
Gotcha.
I'd be fascinated by listening to these people talk about like what drew them to pro wrestling, but then also what drew them to portraying the character that they portray. And so, once I got to catch us back up here, once I got more involved in music, I immediately attracted to the back end of how the industry works. I would look at, my favorite bands at the time, and I wasn't just looking at it from the standpoint of like, this new song is sick, much like I'm not watching wrestling from this fight is so cool. I was looking at the way bands were releasing this stuff, and I'm like, this imagery is really cool. What does this song really mean? What story is the music video telling me? Or how did they market this release? Again, I don't know if there's a particular reason that I was like...
Yeah, that's night and day to the average person. I can tell you that for sure.
Right. But for some reason, that's always where my head went. So even when I'm in a band, and like I said, a member leaves or we're about to release a song, I'm like, well, here's how it's done on like the big level. So why are we not doing that too?
That's big though.
So that then transfers into, when I'm not in a band anymore and I'm doing like the promotional agency and I'm working with a lot of these local bands, that's when it turns into, okay, well, how are you branding yourself and how are you doing this? And at the same time, like it was the cool thing at that point in time to have a clothing line and an apparel brand. So at the same time this was happening, I was also starting up one of those.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I saw that in your social, and I was just interested because we've talked a little bit about it, and there's stuff that I want to put out for the podcast or also that kind of like relates with the podcast, and it's one of my interests. Aaron wants to know. Yeah. I'm sure there's other people that want to know. How'd that go, and tell me a little bit about it.
So basically, like where all this stuff came up was like right towards the end of high school. And I think when you're graduating, the main question everybody always has is like, what are you going to do? What are you doing? You're about to graduate. What college are you going to? What major are you going to get? What job are you going to have?
And 99% of us have no clue.
Yeah, most people have no clue. I was in that, except for the only thing I did have a clue for was I don't want to have a quote unquote normal job. I knew from like, even in high school when the focus is more on, again, girls and hanging out with your friends and video games at that point in time. And I've never, like, I'm not a drinker or anything. So partying was never like a thing that I focused on. But all that other stuff, in general, you're not focusing on really like what your job is going to be and all that sort of stuff. But the one thing I was focused on was what can I do with myself so I don't have to do something I hate? Because, and again, for some reason, that was always something I was drawn to and paid a lot of attention to, was I see a lot of people, and still to this day, it's the same thing. You see people who are like, I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my job. Or even deeper, I'm unhappy with my life. I'm unhappy with my setting, whatever. That was always in the back of my head of, I don't want to become that. I don't want to do that. And kind of like how, like when I started at the beginning of this podcast, like, I always had a desire of like, I just want to try everything. So graduating, the questions are, what are you going to do? My answer was, I'm going to work with bands and I'm going to start a clothing line.
Oh, okay.
Two things that nobody has any idea if you're going to make any money from them.
Right.
But I was like, I'm going to do it. But I did, get a real job, and I worked at a factory at the time in my hometown.
Okay.
That was kind of like the job. If you had that in the hometown, like that's like you're set. You could work there forever and you're fine.
Okay, gotcha.
My plan, of course, was not to work there forever. It was, I understand I need a job. Got a job there, and luckily for me, it was really mundane work that you could just kind of sit and, it's the cliche like what you see in cartoons, somebody working in a factory. It's you sit and your hands can do the motion and you can be elsewhere.
Right.
So I used a lot of that time to my benefit of, instead of being mad that I was at work or angry or trying to do a bad job at work, I would do exactly what I knew I needed to be doing to get the job done. But I had a notepad sitting right beside me at all times, and any thought or idea that I had creatively, I'm jotting them down. So that way, the moment that I'm off work and I go home, I can jump on my MacBook and start designing or start whatever. So that, of course, turns into the clothing line.
Gotcha. Yeah, and just before you get on, that's something I feel like a lot more people that have that idea should be doing as well. Is like,
Yeah.
If that's even if that's the bare minimum you can do, is
Yes.
write something down on a little notepad, because
Yep.
they don't want you to have your phone, or you can't have anything else close enough to you, or be
Right.
involved with something else. That's something that's key, man. It's like, even at my job right now, I'm like, sticky notes galore beside me and things like that, and I'll just like ideas, you know what I mean? Ideas or things I come across.
Yeah, and like, not to get on too much of a side tangent, but like I think that a lot of people don't know that even if you're in a situation that you don't like, you can still have control over it.
Mindset.
It's mindset. It's
Man.
100% mindset.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to pretend that at that point in time I felt like I unlocked mindset, but that was my natural, like, okay, here's what I need to do so I'm not going insane.
Right.
I don't like this job. I don't want to be here forever. But I'm still going to do my job, and I'm still going to make sure I'm doing it well. But I'm going to make sure I'm doing it well so then I can sit in my own little cubicle, and then I can jot down all these things, because I'm still, just because I'm at a job I don't like doesn't mean that I have to just lose myself in that and be bummed all day.
Right.
Why would I use my time being mad at doing something that I have to do?
Right.
And like, yeah, you can get different jobs and all that sort of stuff, but I'm not going to sit and use my whole day to be mad. I'll sit it and it's like, okay, that's when I discovered podcasts like that, because that was right at the time frame when they just started being a thing.
Okay.
Like Joe Rogan had hopped in. There's a guy named Colt Cabana who had like a really good, he's a wrestler.
Okay.
Who had a podcast where he would interview all these wrestlers, and it was these kind of conversations just set more in like the wrestling world of what it was like coming up as an independent wrestler and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sure you're familiar with Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh, I mean, he's like inspiration number one for this.
Yeah. If I can be a hipster brag guy for a second, like I was there in like the first like 50 episodes or less.
Gotcha. Where it was Skype or something like that.
Yeah, it was him and one other
bedroom
guy
or something.
Yeah, Brian Redband and him.
Yeah.
It was just like some dark curtains and Christmas lights, and they would just sit and be like, "So, what are you doing?" Like, but I learned to kind of lose myself in those, and kind of how we were talking with like television and stuff earlier. That was a new form of like, okay, I can take information from this. I can learn. He has a scientist on. I don't want to be a scientist, but I'm going to learn what this scientist is saying.
For sure.
And so anyway, I would focus more on like, what can I positively get out of this job rather than the paycheck at, every 2 weeks. That's great. But how can I use then that paycheck to fund all these ideas that I'm having? And as long as I'm making sure that I'm continuing to cycle out ideas and not only have the ideas, but then execute those ideas and work on those ideas, because that's a huge thing too.
It's the biggest.
It's
the biggest, man.
It's
way bigger than ideas. I've learned that more and more. I've seen people talk about that more and more. Like, ideas are trashed at the end of the day, because there's a million ideas out there that may have been the greatest ones of all time that no one knows about and will ever know about, because someone didn't follow through with it or try to make something happen.
Yes, it's the execution of the idea. So, like I said, I would make sure that whatever was on that notepad, I'm going home, even if I'm getting home at midnight, 1 a.m., I'm doing those ideas and I'm working on those. So, I mean, and you can imagine though that's a struggle to, like, again, you're fresh out of high school, you want to start chasing these dreams of working in the music industry and having this clothing line and being creative, but you're in a factory. Usually, like, my schedule was like 1 p.m. to 12 a.m. every day. That is a whole day.
Yeah, your whole day's gone.
You know what I mean? But I was like, okay, how can I refocus this? So I used that job to fund my dreams, pretty much, right? Dreams at the time. I taught myself how to use Photoshop and all that sort of stuff, because I was just like, it's more so just like, I'm seeing people do cool things. I want to do those cool things too. Because like I said, at the time, especially in the music scene, it was the trend to have a clothing line. So I was like, why can't I have one? Like, I want to have one too. Started it up, was just literally just out of my house. I would design the stuff myself, place the orders. My girlfriend at the time was like our stock person. Like, she would keep count of everything. We would package them up personally and go mail them out, and like, that was the process.
Did you guys start off with like just kind of getting the most basic t-shirts or something like that, or did you kind of sample some different ones? Or?
So that was another thing, like kind of how you were telling me earlier with this podcast. Like, you were like, if I'm going to start it, I want to do it right. And not that I was like trying to spend all my money on this clothing line, but I was like, I don't want shirts that feel like cardboard when someone wears them. So I did try and put in a little bit of the extra money of like, okay, I want somebody to want to wear this shirt.
Right.
Whether they like the design or not, even if they just want to support me and buy it, when they put the shirt on, I want them to be like, okay, this might be one of my favorite shirts because of how comfortable it is.
Right.
So yeah, I did take the kind of those extra steps in trying to have that care of like, again, I'm down to do the idea and I want to do it, but I don't want to do it half-assed.
Gotcha.
Basically.
So how to get going, and how was it looking money making wise or attention wise? Or
so again, being from a small town, it's in ways an advantage if you do anything creative, because everyone's like, what? Like a clothing line?
Doing it.
I just know Nike. Like, you have your own Nike. So luckily, again, and having a hand in the music scene at that time too, it's the trend. All the bands I know want to be decked out in this merch. So it's like they're going to buy it, or they're going to do a sponsorship with me where they're going to wear it at their shows and in their promos and stuff. So it's like there's extra promotion. And like, honestly, thinking back, like it never got big, but still to this day, people will bring it up to me or still have the shirts and like either send me a picture or something like, hey, look what I'm wearing today. I'm like, oh. But both from like a ground level, like people in my town and the surrounding towns that I'm friends with, cool, they're buying it by default. But mixing that with the people in the bands that are picking it up, and then having the power of Facebook at that point in time when it was like really nice to have it, you have the whole internet at your disposal. You have anybody that you don't know sees you post about your clothing line. If they like the design, then cool, they're going to pick it up. And honestly, again, like it never got big, but it had like a pretty solid support foundation to where I was like, okay, like I'm actually kind of shocked here.
Gotcha, that's cool.
But I did it for like a couple of years, and I think at some point it honestly just got tiring to like take care of, where I was like, okay, it's almost as if like I checked it off my list and then I remembered that I checked it off my list, where I was like, oh, well, I mean, technically, like I've done this. It's done. I'm not like, yes, if it got gigantic and I was still doing it, cool, that would be rad. But a lot of the times, at least for me, as long as I can in some way, in some form, check something off my to-do list, that's good enough for me.
Okay.
So I had the idea of a clothing line, wanted to do it. I did it. I think it was like for 2 or 3 years I did it. And it got whatever following it did, and I made all the designs and it was cool, but it sort of just with me ran its course, where I was like, the stuff's still selling. And, I tried to play it smart and made it a limited clothing brand. So that way everything was printed, was one-time print. There was only X amount of them, and that was it. I'm not going to keep restocking and sit on 1,000 shirts that people only bought 20 of.
Gotcha,
you know what I mean? So even from the start, I was like, okay, I don't expect this to get big, so how can I play that in my favor? But it just sort of ran its course. I was like, okay, creatively, I don't want to do this anymore. What else can I be doing? And that's when, more of the marketing and promotions work for bands really started to kick in.
Gotcha. And how'd that kind of change your life going forward, as far as you being just a guy in the factory doing your side notes and stuff like that, and then getting into shirts, to then like, okay, transitioning to maybe this is what I'm going to go for full time, and this is going to be my full time money maker?
Yeah. So, eventually moved out of the factory and moved into like just a normal like retail job, which can be a step up for sure. But it still was just kind of that unfulfilling, like, again, I'm just doing this to pay the bills, or I'm just doing this to fund the projects and the creative stuff. And realistically, like, the more that I did with bands, the more that I realized not just like, oh man, I do want to do this, but I kind of can do this. There's at some point when you take something from I want to do this, so then you realize that you can and you are, right? And I think a lot of people honestly don't make that switch. They mentally don't have that acceptance of, I am doing the thing that I wanted to do.
I'm just now getting to the point of realizing that is almost anything. That like, if you decide this is what you're going to do, it's like either you can put all your effort towards it and make it happen.
Right.
Or you dabble with it and it fizzles out, and you think, oh, it's something I couldn't do, or it's like, no, you really realize with a lot of different things, especially if you're not talking about trying to become LeBron or trying to become some crazy. It's like if especially with different things in business and like just pushing a certain idea, a certain business, a certain brand, it's like if you really put the work in, there's a way. There's a way for almost everyone.
Right. And that was, again, what I made sure I drilled in my head of there's nothing that says I can't be trying these things. And again, I can complain all day about having a job that I don't like, whether it's the retail job, factory job, whatever. But what am I doing with that extra time? You know? And through that job / through the clothing line, when it was still a thing, I met a good friend of mine and now like a business partner in a lot of ways, Josh Emmerich.
Okay, yeah.
Who, Louise, works with us a lot and all that sort of stuff. So I'm sure you've secondhand heard about him.
Yeah. I actually started following him and was aware of him before I was aware of you.
Nice. Yeah. And like, so I actually learned a lot of creativity and business from him. So he was almost my like, if we're going to use like a video game term, like, we're in one of the racing games and you hit that boost that sends you further like down the track.
Okay, gotcha.
He was almost my creative boost because he kind of stepped in and we worked together at the retail job.
Okay.
So I then found myself like, while I'm working this job, it's not just I'm noting down things I want to do anymore. It's I'm getting to have active conversations almost like this while we're doing work because we worked in the same department. So it was like, and he's wanting to do the same things that I'm wanting to do, but he has a camera in his hands to do it, right? He has the tools to now really create. So it's like, I had this back end and this foundation already built. He had the tools to now make it even bigger. So it was kind of a natural fit.
Gotcha. About how old is he?
He's like 20, I want to say like 28. So he's a couple years older than I am.
Okay.
But
I asked because I noticed things like a lot of the different things you said and the ways you're thinking. And I noticed a lot of it, not to sound like an old guy, because I hope that I'm not at all, but it's like in your era and like coming up more in the social media era and being able to pull more pieces from that and kind of see it evolve as it's going. It's like, even with all the negative people have had to say about what social media is doing or doing to kids and too much time and too much of this, and they're all going to be like this. And it's like, I see more so it is making you guys way more business savvy because you're able to see how many different avenues there are in business. Like, so even for you right off the jump to say that, oh, it made you think about who's doing this and who's doing this part, and we need someone for this part. And it's like, I think also the social media age and era now has been where you see so much of people actually talking about that part, and there being like a podcast that's based around each individual side of things, and people saying, oh, this is, even if it's somebody tagging somebody in something they do, and you're like, oh, so he's not taking all his own pictures. Oh, so they're not doing all their own artwork. This is that, this and that, like a number of different things like that that kind of have shown behind the curtain a little bit in a lot of different avenues, instead of just like when you said just getting it from the movies from the start or something like that. It's like seeing, you guys are seeing a lot earlier and faster, and it's becoming very normal for you. And then someone like you that is just even more fast forward thinking of it and just has it like seem to just be in your blood of thinking that way. It's creating a totally different kind of business monster, it seems to me, and someone from my age group that's just a little bit older, because it's like so much of this is brand new to us. So much of this is like we would watch something or see something, even if it's movie, TV, online, sports, this and that, and all we think about is the figurehead.
Totally.
Like, and it's just like we want to be like that person, or oh man, one day if I could be like somehow attached to something like that, but never really thinking like, oh, well, there are multiple people involved in what you see as a final product in front of you, and what you see is with advertising and branding and this, that, and other. So it's been really cool for me to see that now, and I feel like I'm learning it late, but it's everywhere now, and it makes so much sense that it is, because it's now, I think like you kind of mentioned too, a lot of people weren't aware how much Facebook and Instagram would be so conducive to all that, to how you can spend just a little bit of money in advertising, like you said. And even before they would do the ads, back in the era that you're talking about, it's like you can reach people that would before have no idea who you are, or who your brand is, or even be looking. And now all of a sudden you're reeling them in. That's also why I tell people now too, like, one of the big things I think when someone starts something or starts a business or gets in a certain avenue or venture, it's like, it's sometimes not even how good they are. It's how much advertising is, or
Yeah.
how well the branding is done, or things like that. It's like, so I'll see somebody start something and it fizzle out, and I'm like, damn, man, like if they had someone that really they were good, they were awesome at what they do, or that could have been big.
Yeah.
And it's like it just needs the right person.
Right. And I mean, like, even to your point, like, that's how Josh even came about me, was social media. You know, he's seeing like, okay, this guy from, you know, he lived in the next town over, which is still like a small-ish town, but was bigger than mine, if that tells you anything. And, you know, so he kind of finds me as like, okay, here's like this dude who works with a bunch of bands and has this clothing line. So he's creative. So, you know, he originally reached out to me just to do photo and video for my clothing line.
Oh, okay.
Like, that was how it even started, was
God.
he bought something and he saw the way that I like packaged it and felt how the shirts were made and all that sort of stuff. And that said something to him of like, this person really cares about their brand. That made him then reach out and be like, hey, can I offer you some photo and video? Let's do it. And then we shot. And then eventually it turns into, you know, we're working at the same place, and I have this, you know, music scene at my fingertips, and he wants to get more involved in the music scene, and he has a camera in his. So it was this then natural fit, but it was brought on because of social media. You know what I mean? And so, you know, at this time too, I think like when you're officially getting into like what is adulthood, right? You're out, you have real jobs and all that sort of stuff. It still is that lingering question from family of like, what are you going to do? Right. You know what I mean? Like, what's the plan? Like, hey, you're doing this creative thing. That's rad. And again, like, I guess I also want to clear up too, like, you know, the negative family stuff that I had in my childhood had luckily cleared itself up by the time I was an adult, to where you can really take it in and really understand what's going on. Like, you know, the stepmom that was causing all the problems, like, she had been long gone. So I like, there's a part of me that wonders, like, had that stuff stuck around, what more trials and tribulations would there have been? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, would your path look the same?
Right,
sure.
right. And, you know, had that negative influence been there, what would have happened? But, you know, by this time, it's like, it's cleared up, and like the only kind of looming thing that there is from family is like, okay, what is your actual job though? Like, cool, you're working this retail job, like, make sure you work that. Don't drop the part-time, work full-time, because yeah, the clothing line is cool, but it's just a thing. Or the music stuff is cool, but it's just a thing. And so, you know, start working with Josh more. He now has this tool that I can use, you know, to actually do things, you know, and that's when the involvement of music videos and band promos and stuff like that kind of gets added to the repertoire, right? Of, you know, I could design and I could market and promote and all this sort of stuff, but here's this other aspect that now there's another layer of what I can add to all this. So that's kind of when it first started going into, this could actually be a career, was once those tools were introduced and we found out how we best work together. We found out that we had very similar mindsets and both kind of wanted the same thing. So it was like, okay, like, and if I can note on that really quick, like, that's something that I don't think a lot of people do, is find like-minded individuals and find out how you can all work towards the same goal and help each other. I think there's a lot of people that are like, I'm doing my thing, that person can do theirs, whatever, that person can do theirs, whatever. When it's like, if the 5 people doing nearly the exact same thing decided to work together, imagine what the sum of the parts could be.
Yeah. It comes from the crabs in the barrel mentality, man.
Exactly.
Where it's like,
exactly.
There's not enough, like, they're going to be stealing some of my business, or even just some of my shine, or if I put something out, I'm going to look like I'm just copying them or doing it.
Right.
And it's weird too, that's another thing that's becoming a little bit more okay and accepted by the younger and younger generations, it seems, is that the collab mentality.
Yeah.
And it's been huge. And it's funny even for you to explain how you and Josh got together, and that's a similar story to me and Luis.
Mm-hmm.
We started working together, and we'd be at work just like throwing these ideas off of each other. Like,
right.
Oh man, like, just, I mean, anything and everything. You think we'd be talking sports, this, that, but it somehow, like, a lot of times would come back around to like, man, we got to do something together. Like,
yeah,
we need to do something. And over time it was like, okay, yeah, it slowly would get narrowed down. And I don't know if that was the same case for you guys, but it kind of just started getting to where, like, okay, now it's like, yeah, our focus, he has a lot of other stuff that he's into as well, but it's been nice that, like, we both are working at this and trying to make it better. And it was something that we were both interested in doing, because even early on, I'm thinking like, oh man, I could really I think I could really do something with like talking and doing the podcast thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I would need for sure like a lot of help or someone. And then when he was interested, and not only interested, but he's like, yeah, let's do it. Like now, let's go. Like he was on it to where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is awesome.
And it's those steps of like not being afraid to collaborate, because you could sit and be like, well, I want to start this podcast, but like I want to be able to do it by myself. I want to know that like I can take all the credit for the video and the lights and all that sort of stuff, rather than just like, what's the portion I'm good at? What's the portion you're good at? How can we put those together and make it better? You know, because again, to re-answer the earlier question, like what came first? Like, was it camera or just creativity, or when did that happen? It was all the stuff, and I had never touched a camera. And now a camera is involved in so much of what I do. But that wouldn't have happened had I not worked with him.
So how many years you think you've been more hands-on with the camera?
So honestly, like to where I could genuinely say like, yes, I have been shooting for this long, like 3 years.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy to see the amount of stuff you put out, the quality of stuff you put out, and the things you've been involved in. I think for a lot of people, they're going like, shit, man. 3 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it is kind of crazy to say, but I guess it never processes through my head because I've just been like on the grind for like years and years. But yeah, like the camera thing literally just popped up secondhand.
Man, those are the best people. Like, so that's something I'm noticing, and I've caught myself lately talking to so many people about it, referencing my wife and even her mom, but a lot of my wife for sure is like, I notice there's people that just do what's in front of them, like an idea or a task or whatever comes up in front of me. It's like, yep, this is what I do. This, like, just pick up whatever tool now, move this here, like everything is go. And even on like more of a mental state too, it's like, okay, time to plan, time to write these things down, this and that. It's like, and that's very much how she is. And I see like, it's so crazy to me for someone that wasn't like that. I was always somebody that would just like overthink things like crazy, and I'd have to like process every detail and think like, and then I see people that are just like, nope, this is what we're gonna do, or this is it. And even Jessica Rainey that I had on the podcast too, or well, she was even talking about on there how like somebody, once she first started dabbling in modeling, was like, oh, do you do commercials? Yes, I do. Yeah, I do commercials, this and that, like, and just going with it. And it's like that mentality sometimes leads to you getting into like getting a lot more opportunity, but also just knocking down, like you said, almost some stuff on your list. I'm gonna check this off, or learning more things along the way that feed what you're really trying to go after. Right.
And that was kind of like where I was at this point in time. Was the next thing on my checklist was to self-sustain, right? Of how can I make this
my full time?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a business, doesn't have to be a brand, whatever. It's just how can I do this full time?
And was your thoughts early on too, like even just when you say it that way, just to clarify, like just enough to pay my bills and I'd be happy? Or is it like I really want this to be successful? Or is it a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, given like the time period. Like so to me, I was almost looking at it in steps of, okay, like if first the small check on the list would be pay my bills. Like if I can pay my bills with this, then like, cool, that's a good step. But with the looming goal of, okay, I'm going to do something that's involved in whatever creativity, whatever avenue I want to do. That is the goal. But at that time, and honestly now even, I don't know if I have like a one thing that I'm like, that's the thing. If I can do that, then I'm set. I'm like, here's a list of 50 things, and I'm going to actively work towards all of them in some way. And if one pops off and works the best, then that actually makes it easier for me to do the rest of them. So that I'm still going to do those.
I like that a lot, man, because that's kind of my mindset been with this, is like whatever spawns from this podcast. Yeah. It's like, even if it's something that I was just not even expecting at all. And it's something to where it's like, I feel like I would always still like to do something like this, because like me and you talked about before the podcast, I really enjoy this type of conversation. Yeah. But it's like, if something else comes with this that just kind of totally consumes most of my time, I'm like, cool. If it's the thing or it goes, like, cool. Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, again, feeding into kind of like the underlying theme that we keep talking about is like, I just want to try stuff. You know, how you were talking about when something's in front of somebody, they just do it. It's just like,
Yep, I'm gonna do this. Are you a commercial model? I sure am.
Yeah.
Yep.
I recommend
Like,
it to so many young people now, man, after hearing Gary Vee talk about that. Like,
mhm.
I recommend it to so many young people and like young family members like that I talk to, and they're trying to say like, hey, what do you think you're going to get into? Or what are you interested in nowadays and stuff like that. And I just try to tell them, even though it wasn't what I did or it wasn't my experience, it was just like, I hear so many people say that are doing great things or are really happy with what they're doing.
Mhm.
It's like, because it makes so much sense. It's like, if you try all these different things, that's how you weed out what you do and don't like. And it's
Right.
like, with me, I didn't try things for so long that it's like, everything that I do, it has to be very like, okay, I'm going to go with this and then we'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm also this old and there's this risk and I'm trying to
Right.
still manage like a family and a life and a house and this and that, to where it's like, I tell young people, try anything. Like, if
Right.
you got to move here and work this job, or go here and intern here for a little while, or do this
Yeah.
for free or whatever, like, just try all kinds of shit and see where it takes you.
Yeah, and it's because you can do that stuff logically too.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean, it's like, understand that, hey, like, a big question I get all the time is like, I want to try freelance. How can I be freelance? And I'm like, well, have a plan. Work the job that you don't like, but be doing all the freelance stuff on the side when you're not at work. So you're already doing it. So then it's kind of like the launch pad. Like, have that cushion of, cool, I'm not just up and leaving my job one day and I have nothing planned, but I sure do want to freelance. I want to be creative, but I've done nothing to start that process. Then you're just without a job.
Right,
like,
right.
Then, but that's kind of like what I did. And again, along with Josh at that point in time, it was, okay, we're going to grind it out at this job that neither of us like and we know we're not going to stay at. But all of our free time will be devoted to all this creative stuff we want to do. Whether it's, okay, hey, let's schedule this shoot, for this day. Cool, we both have the day off on that Saturday. Okay, that's when we're going to do these 3 things that we have been having to put off for 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Does it feel like new shit's coming up all the time, new ideas coming up all the time for you guys because you have multiple people involved?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's always things coming up.
Right,
And now it's for sure welcome, because it's like, okay, we can determine what fills our time, right? So it's like, cool, let's take it all. And so that was kind of it. I made that plan of making sure I was doing what I wanted to do before I left the real job, right? At least in some sense. There's some sort of a starter foundation there. And then it kind of becomes like, that's when the move to Columbus comes up.
Gotcha.
Because that was still back in like hometown area.
Well, and I think this is key, man, because I think this is what I want to know. So like, falls right in line with, like I said in the podcast, like Aaron wants to know. But so this is exactly what I think other people that are maybe thinking about making this jump want to hear from the guests and people like you too. Is like, so what did it take as far as like, okay, I was making about half of what I was, or I was making close, but I knew if I had this extra time, then I would be able to do that? Or were you already making enough to where you're like, okay, I'm basically making what I need to make? Or give me an idea of that.
I think the first, like, if I can just give like a clear eye opener, was the first time when I realized like the paycheck that I can make in 2 weeks at this place that I don't like, I can at least get relatively close to by doing all this stuff on the side. And that's still not a lot of money, right? It's still, because I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of jobs that don't pay that well. You know what I mean? Nobody really has money, right? And freelance is even harder because you determine whether you make your money. But that was kind of like the one eye opener. Like, and this might not even be the safest way, but it was like the first time that happened. The first time that I was like, wait, I just made, and again, it's not like it's millions or even thousands, but it's like, I just made this and I would have to go hate myself for 2 weeks to make that there. So, okay, well then if I'm putting more time into this, why couldn't I double that paycheck or triple that paycheck or whatever? Maybe the effort comes down to me making that decision, right? So, there was glimpses of it working, but it was also a point in time where, again, I felt like I had ran my course on, like, I feel like looking back in retrospect like this, I feel like something I'm noticing just in myself, as weird as that is to say, is like, I feel like I continuously hit glass ceilings and then I'm like, okay, time to go around, time to break through that, time to get the next thing, leveling up in each of these different things. Where, again, it was like, okay, I've almost hit the glass ceiling in how well I can manage my life having this day job and having this creative stuff on the side, right? So that's still a good thing to do, but it's like almost like clearing that level of like, okay, well, now I'm kind of not personally seeing the point in staying at this job anymore while I'm pursuing this stuff on the side. And I think now it's the time to shift and try that.
Right. And it makes sense. I mean, I guess for some people that probably are making fairly decent money, it probably makes it a little bit tougher because then you're like, well, the money's not too bad where I'm at, so it has to be really good for me to the money I'm making on the side to really leave it. But at the same time, it's like, I think definitely if you're somewhere where, like you said, it's not paying that well, it's like, hey,
yeah, it's just,
can I do something and actually enjoy my life and enjoy what I'm doing and maybe be a lot happier as a person?
It's that trade-off. It's the cliche line of like, I'd rather do something I loved and struggle with it than do something I hate and be comfortable.
Right.
Like, I'm for sure one of those people that's like, I'll struggle it out if it means that I'm happier with what I'm doing.
Right. And there's different people that I've noticed, like, some people are happy with one way or the other. You know what I mean? It's like, I've even noticed it with me at times because I still work a regular job and all that. So it's like, there's times when it's like, man, it's nice to get a set amount of money that you didn't have to like go crazy to make sure it was this much this month or this and that, whatever. But to get a set amount, and then also that when you're away from it, it's like you wipe your hands to where it's like when you do something like you do, like Luis does, like a lot of our guests that we brought on, it's almost like a lot of people, that side that a lot of people don't know, that somebody might hit you up at any hour of the day and it turn into something like, maybe I'm not going to jump up and go leave to go do something, but I'm definitely either going to converse with them, email, set something up, like to where it's kind of like there's not much time that you're really wiping your hands unless you really, really choose to. And then in that time, are you actually kind of hurting yourself maybe or blocking yourself from some business or some money? Right.
And I mean, that's, I would find myself doing that. I'd be stocking shelves for my real job. And if I saw a Facebook message pop up on my phone from band X, whatever, that was thinking about hiring me for promos or video or design or whatever, cool, I'm taking a bathroom break and I'm going to go and I'm going to go through that message and try and get it booked that day. I'm cool. I'll use my time that I'm getting this paycheck from this place. I'll use it to further my business.
For
Great.
Sure.
But so, I had that general foundation sort of set up. So I was just like, okay, and at this point in time, I had moved to Columbus. I had made the move. There was a group of friends that were getting, a house together up here, and it was like a friend who I had met through the music scene. Like our bands had played together forever ago. He was in bands when I was in bands. Oddly enough, it's actually Maddie McClellan who does Poltergeist with me now.
Gotcha.
So he was kind of leading this, bunch of us to, hey, we're all trying to get a house in Columbus. Wanted to know if you wanted to move up here. And it was at the perfect time because I was like, well, everything that I kind of have a hand in happens more in Columbus than it does here.
Makes sense
there's
too. Big city type thing.
Yeah, there's way more of a music scene here than the non-existent one that was there.
In a small town.
Way more shows happening up here. And I was driving up here at that point in time, like every weekend or every other weekend anyway, because now it's like, I finally took that step of like, I'm going to physically leave my town and go visit all these friends in bands that I'm friends with on Facebook.
Gotcha.
Right. So, move up here. Then the decision becomes, okay, I'm going to leave this job and I want to try and make this happen. And oddly enough, like at the same time, I got kind of like what I thought was a really cool social media gig, like right at the time that I'm thinking of leaving this retail position. So it was almost like a weird buffer between freelance and a real job.
Okay.
Because
it was kind of a little of both.
It kind of was a real job, but it was in this freelance creative world doing things that I like to do, doing, social media and all that sort of stuff and marketing and branding. So I was like sick. So I jumped into that. But it also allowed me a lot more free time too of cool. I can still work on all this creative stuff. Long story short, that social media job was like one of the worst things I could have ever done. It was terrible. The good thing I learned from it though, is I learned how a lot of agencies work and the flaws that they have. And it also taught me like, here's how I can not do that in my own thing.
Gotcha.
So then it becomes like, I thought I had this dream job. Like low key, that was kind of how I felt. I was like, it's the perfect blend of a real job and creative. So great. That's what I'm going to do. That ends relatively quickly, burns a bridge where I'm just like, this was awful. What an awful experience, but sort of a blessing in disguise because now I'm without a job. But realistically, I was looking at it of like, now I'm free.
Yeah. And now it kind of forces your hand.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, I don't really want to go back to the retail job. I don't really want to pick up, another, because at one point in time, I absolutely was that person who I was working 2 retail jobs to try and make the money and then still trying to do the creative stuff on the side. So, which again, even further proves my point of like, okay, well, my paycheck from these 2 places I made here, so maybe I can make the transition.
Right.
So it just sort of forced my hand almost on like, okay, if you want the freelance thing and you want the creative side,
now.
It's right now. Like, do it. And that's just kind of when I like jumped in. And of course, still, working with Josh, that whole time and everything. And because I think it wasn't too long after that he officially like quit his job too and went full freelance.
Gotcha.
So, then we both find ourselves like in the same creative boat, right?
Gotcha.
It's like, okay, let's hit it hard. We're doing this music industry thing. And that's when it really became more of a full force, like, doing music videos, doing band promos, keeping, the design work for bands and the marketing and all that sort of stuff.
Since you guys also kind of already had a decent amount of connections through you doing band stuff and being involved in music and him trying to do a little, did that like you already have a decent amount of relationships here in Columbus established, or was it like, okay, now this is the time we need to start establishing these relationships and getting connections and getting to know different people in the city?
I was lucky enough to kind of have that scene like already established. Like I already had the connections to, like I said, I was coming up here every other weekend to visit all the friends. So now it's like, now I'm planted right in the middle of it.
Gotcha. And how big is that in your scene? That's big. That's huge, right? To have the relationships and the connections and get to know people. Yeah. Not as far as like it being an advantage to you, but also just that how big a part of that kind of business it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's big because obviously, you can meet anybody, talk to anybody, do all that sort of stuff through the internet. That's great. But there's a lot of stuff in face value, right? There's a lot of stuff in like, hey, I'm doing all this marketing work with bands, but I'm also going to be at the show that you're going to be at too, and we can talk about it all, right? That there is when somebody exists as a real human, you know what I mean? That adds a ton of value to, cool, I'm working with this person, or I want to work with this person. So yeah, being, finding myself up here in the middle of it finally, I do think helped a lot. I genuinely, I mean, now, to be fair, Josh has stayed, down where we were from. And he's obviously doing perfectly fine, just doing a lot of his work up here. But I think for me, I don't think I would have found my way into freelance or creative had I not put myself here. I really don't. I think, again, the level up glass ceiling sort of thing. I think I had also done enough. I had done all the growing that I could do living where I had lived forever, trying to pursue this stuff.
Makes sense, because I mean, I feel like some of your time would be burned traveling stuff as well too, you know what I mean, where like that's adding to time that you could be doing anything, even if it's not directly working on what you're after. Maybe that's a little bit of your free time that then gives you more time to do the other things. So that makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah and so yeah, from there, like it the hand kind of almost got forced in a way on freelance. And I'm not at all like, this is not the part of the story where it's like, then it was smooth sailing and everything was perfect and I'm a freelancer and I'm a millionaire. Like,
yeah. Get into that, man. Tell us a little bit about, because that's something I'm always real interested about. And I think our guest would be too, is like, because I feel like that's where people, that's where you hit your stride in a lot of ways, is once you start to rack up these setbacks. To where it's like, okay, now I know this, now I know this, now I know this. And right. I even saw one of the big ones was when you guys had a bunch of your equipment stolen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when I saw that, man, I was just like, because I think I was already following, I think I might have already been following Josh when it happened, or Luis shared it or something like that. And I was just like, oh man, like I can't even imagine. Like that's the type of things that like makes people quit or makes people like just lose their business.
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of many roadblocks to come at this point in time. It's cool. Now I'm freelance. I have all this free time. I can do whatever I want. But what that technically means is it's time for me to make my own money. And if I don't, it's all on me. This is heavy.
Right.
But again, luckily had already done the groundwork of a network and I'm not even talking in the music industry at this point in time. It's creative industry in general. You move up here in a hub like Columbus and have all these new friends or make these new friends or friends that also moved here from other places, all that sort of stuff. I at least had that network that I had built up and worked on for that amount of time to then work into, right? So that, that obviously helps, oh, hey, a friend of mine said that they needed some design work done. I'm going to toss them your way. Or, hey, I know this band who really could use a good music video. I sent them to you and Josh, whatever it may be. But, again, like I said, it's all on your shoulders. So there was so many points in time where I absolutely was like, this is stupid. Why did I try to do this? Because it's like, hey, and like, I won't shy away from the fact at all that like there were absolutely times where I had to, go to family members and be like, can you help pay rent this month? And luckily, I had the support of family, and that's something I will absolutely touch on, because I know that's a struggle for a lot of people, or also something that I think that when people do have that, they almost look past it. So I want to make sure I'm not looking past it, is that, my family ended up supporting me a lot in this freelance creative venture.
And for some people, it's not even an option.
Right, exactly.
Either the family's not there or the family doesn't have it either.
Yeah, and I also won't pretend like, my family's swimming in money, but they saw the effort that I was putting in, and they saw all of these steps that I was taking of like, well, he started a clothing line at this point in time, and then cool, you started working in the music stuff at this point in time. Then he moved, and now he's doing this, and he's doing so. I think there was at least that like respect factor there of like, damn, we know you're trying. So you know what? Yes, like we'll help you pay rent. But I'm not going to shy away from the fact that I had to ask, help to pay rent a lot. I would say out of a solid 12 months, 6 of them were paid by family. You know what I mean? Like 100%. So luckily I had that safe cushion, right? But it also wasn't like they were, here, have an extra $1,000 to
spending
for
money
your troubles. Like it was never that. It was just,
yeah.
I got lucky enough that they tossed a couple $100 towards rent, which absolutely kept me afloat, right? But then you have the mental side of it where you're like, this is honestly ridiculous that I'm asking my family a couple, because rent is, at least my rent up to this point, it's not $1,000, $2,000. I know it can totally be that, but mine wasn't. It's a couple $100. So you start looking at yourself, figuratively looking in the mirror of like, I can't pay $300 for rent. You know what I mean?
Right,
it's like, and I gotta ask grandmas for that money. It's like, man, like that's kind of
how did
like,
I get here?
Right. How did I find myself here? And like, why am I letting this happen? So tons of ups and downs like that, where it's like you want to quit, but it's that there's that small thing somewhere that's like, you have to keep.
You know what I think was the biggest factor on that, as somebody from the outside in, just hearing you say this right now?
Yeah.
You kept saying, how did I? Right. You said, how did I? You didn't say, why aren't people latching on to what I do? Why isn't the business like this now that I'm here in Columbus?
Right.
Why? There was no blaming, or that, at least from what you're saying right now, your mentality was, how did I get here? Why am I not able to make more than this? Why am I not able to make this work?
Yeah.
So to me, I feel like that's why you got through. That's why it became a thing. That's why you had that pride. You had that that mindset that this is on me. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's hearing it from the outside like that. That does make a lot of sense, because that was my big thing. Was I can't blame anybody else for anything that happens to me. And yes, things from the outside happen, right? People are rude to you. People do this. People stole your shit. Right. But, and a big thing that I say all the time that I learned from podcasts, I'm not going to pretend like I made this up. But what happens doesn't matter. What does matter is your reaction to it. Absolutely. And once I started learning that, I think I kind of inherently had that, mindset, because that's just in the last like year, I really heard that and like locked down on that. But I think I always tried to keep that mentality unknowingly before, where it's like, okay, I'm broke. Okay, what do? Do I sit around and am sad because I'm broke and I have no money? Or, okay, who can I ask for help? And then how can I solve the problem so I don't have to ask them for help again? Right. And, because it's, you can look at everything. I could sit and, there's so many details of family stuff and all that sort of stuff that I touched on, that it's like,
there's a lot of stuff that honestly nothing says I should be doing anything that I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Especially the fact you said it wasn't really nothing in your family to
right.
for you to get an idea of where to see it, how to start it, how to go about it, how to deal with the setbacks.
Right. And so it's I think looking back on it all, it's okay. The reactions to everything. I could have sat and been like, oh, my family was divided until I was like 13 and it was such this big issue. And like, yeah, it is a big issue and it sucked, but
it is what it is.
It is what it is. And I'm not going to sit today and be like, my life was hard because of this. It's here's totally what happened, but here's how I got through it. And it's the same thing when, all these freelance and creative kicks were happening, all the roadblocks were happening and like, dude, I'm not kidding. Like I was that creative. I was the starving artist for
gotcha.
Like there were times where, and this is like honestly kind of embarrassing to say, but at the same time, it's like, it's part of the story. And there's another side where I make it through. There was totally times where I was counting change out of my couch so I could go buy like a drink at a gas station. Not a thing that I would let everybody know at that point in time, right? But it was at that point for a couple months. And again, it's like, okay, what can I do to solve this? Because I did not want to stop. I did not want to give up and just be like, well, this is hard. I'll try again later. Yeah. It was, no, I'm going to try again today. I'm going to try again right now. So once I count this change and go buy this pop at the gas station and then come back, who am I emailing? Who am I messaging? What conversation am I following up on? What am I posting to further engage the next set of work?
Yeah, you're just reaffirming a thought for me that like is one of those things where like we need those times, man. We need those times to motivate us and to like to push you forward, man, and to push you through, because it's like there's so many people that I talk to, a lot of people that we've brought on here, that's something they say is like, yeah, I didn't have this, you know what I mean? Or some of the people just didn't come from nothing to where that's what they do. But also it's like those times and those struggles, it's like that's where it really gets you to kind of like self-reflect, get some self-awareness,
right,
and really think like you said, start making a plan or an idea, or even just giving yourself a new mentality of like, oh, there's things that need figured out and they need figured out like now.
And I do think a lot of that, again, comes from, not to get too far out of the timeline again here, but like I think it does come from like my childhood, where it's like I got to see two different sides of living, technically, like when I was a kid,
because of different parents being different.
Yes, places. I had one side of my family who, again, by no means rich at all, but was perfectly fine on money. Right? It was like I got to see that side of like, you want the new video game? We'll go buy it. Cool. And then I saw the other side that was, we don't know if you can get that new video game. Like, but hey, let's find other ways that you can be happy. So it's like I feel like I in an odd way, like inherited like this understanding of like what both sides are like, right? Where again, it's not the lavish, rich lifestyle, but it's a lifestyle of like, okay, we're okay on money.
Yeah, I'm recognizing it just now as you say it, that's kind of the same thing that happened with me. My parents split early on when I was around like 7 to like the 5 to 7 range is when it all kind of went down. And that's a similar thing. Like my dad at the time was working a place making good money, and it was kind of like, yeah, like buy this, get this. He's buying this, get this, like whatever. And then on the flip side, my mom was really kind of just managing money really well. And she had always been that type and came from that kind of family that they could manage it really well. And I'm just now seeing it and that makes a lot of sense now too, to me, maybe why I've kind of picked up some of the same thought processes and stuff as you.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds pretty similar. And that's, again, it's just a thing that honestly, just recently in my life, I feel like I looked back on and was like, okay.
It's one of the reasons I love these conversations, man, because sometimes in these conversations, I feel like that's what you get. It's like you start explaining something, especially telling your story. Right. Is then you start to get like, oh, this is where that came from.
Yeah, you can start putting 2 and 2 together.
Yeah. And it's cool because then not only do you understand it more and better for yourself, but then also because then you can kind of give that to other people or tell them like, hey, this is how you can go about this, or this is how you might learn this. Right.
And it's okay to have been through this, or it's okay to
talk about it. Yeah, for sure.
And so again, I think that balance was kind of ingrained in me, without knowing, to where now when I'm navigating freelance at this point in time, it's like, okay, even if it is as bad as counting quarters from the couch, I still know and can plan ahead of like, okay, well, once I count these quarters, what's next, or you know what I mean, or even high spots, because there's highs and lows in freelance.
Right.
There was a couple times, I'll never forget the first time I ever had more than $1,000 in my bank account. And I'm talking like 1,005, like that's it. But I was like, oh my God, I'm rich.
Balling.
Like this is amazing. But there's a level side of me that like I'm luckily, and I'm not saying it's bad if you are, but I luckily I'm not a spender. I'm not a lavish. Like I literally this year I finally made the commitment to buying actual real nice shoes, because forever my feet would kill me on video productions, because I was like, I shouldn't spend more than $100 on shoes. That is ridiculous. And that is ridiculous if I'm being honest, but I never was like, no. But I finally made the commitment this year of like, okay, this is investing in me.
Yeah, this is part of my job.
But so the first time I have more than $1,000 in my bank account, luckily I'm not like, I could buy a car. It's
Time to
like,
go to the club, buying
right.
bottles.
Exactly. It's like, no, like again, the ingrained money saving part of me is like, okay, right, I have this now, but how long will this last? Because rent's in 2 weeks, and that's half of that. And then there's utilities, and then there's this, and then there's that, and then I don't know when my next client is. So who knows, so it's being able to kind of manage that stuff. So then, further in the timeline, we get to the point of that you brought up of we get all that stuff stolen. So that was at a very strange point in time where, like reversed even a few months before that, it was another like really hard time in freelance, where it was like there had been like a solid like 4 to 6 months where it was moderately okay, right? It was like we're still growing, you're still learning, because you can always grow and learn no matter what's going on. But it was very like money wise and income, it was like, okay, here's another point in time where it's like, why? Maybe it is. And that was the first time since even the start of freelance, 2 years before that, I think, that was the first time I had contemplated and actually put in applications at what I will call quote unquote real jobs.
Gotcha.
So I was kind of done. And, of course, Josh being, my business partner and pretty much everything, I'm having those conversations with him, and he's at the same spot.
Oh,
right?
okay.
We're both, because at that point in time, everything we did was pretty much together. If there's a shoot, we're doing it together. If there's this, so it was like we are the business partners together, right? It wasn't I'm freelancing, he's freelancing. It was just, what are we doing together, right? So I'm not well off, he's not well off. He's now getting the stress of a family, right? Because he and his wife have a child. So then, and that's a stress that I don't have, right? So I can only fathom and understand from what he and other people explain that to me, right? But so he's going through all those struggles of like, man, we're not busy, and I've got all I personally have to do is like, if I can't buy Chipotle, I'm upset.
Right.
He's got a wife and a kid that's like, I have to pay these bills and keep these other human beings alive.
I could buy Chipotle and health insurance.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, it's we hit a point in time where it was like, man, like maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe this for the first time. And this I'm not even at the gear part yet. Like this is still before this. We had another moment where it was like, we're done. Like maybe not done pursuing creative. We're still going to do it, but we need to revert back to it's on the free time. It's on the side. Let's get something that actually pays the bills. So like I said, I applied to jobs and all that sort of stuff. And then this is super weird and it's going to sound like a self-help part of this podcast. But then I found out about mindset. And a lot of that actually came from, I don't know if you listened to it or not, but the Short Story Long podcast.
I feel like Luis mentioned to me one time, and I listened to a little bit of it.
Josh and I for sure probably hounded him on that to check that out.
Gotcha.
So I find the Short Story Long podcast, and I don't know if you remember the MTV shows Rob and Big, Fantasy Factory, stuff like that. You remember Drama?
Yeah.
Like the cousin? Okay,
yeah.
So it's his podcast. He's the host,
yeah.
right?
I'm definitely listening. Okay, I wasn't putting it together, but yes, I've definitely listened.
Yeah, it's
and
this,
he's been doing it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's positive, encouraging, whatever, deep conversations like this, right? So I stumble across that, and I listened to a handful of episodes where he has these people on that they're talking about mindset. And then I'm also hearing that, they're not just hopping on and saying like, be positive and think positive and then your life will be great. They're telling their whole story and then explaining to, me, the listener, how they got through it, why it didn't affect them, all that sort of stuff. Oddly enough, what we're doing right now, right? But that, at that point in time for me, I had never gotten to really hear that. Because as a creative, I think a lot of the times, or a freelancer or whatever, you really feel like you're in the boat alone, because, and especially with social media, like the bad part of social media is comparison, right? And comparison is like the thief of joy, right? Because you're going to look at what everybody else is doing that's similar to you, and they've already got the following, or whether they've been doing it longer or they had a connection or whatever.
Everything they do is so cool. This, that, yeah.
You're just looking at what they're doing and what you're not. So it's the comparison part. But I'm hearing all these different aspects of how to look at that and how to turn that into something positive and how to force yourself through bad times and all that sort of stuff. And it all revolves around mindset. That's, the cool one-liner I said earlier that I said I didn't make up. I learned it at that point in time. It's not what happens. It's your reaction to it. So I really had one of those moments where it's, figuratively looking in the mirror and just being like, okay, why am I complaining every day that this stuff is hard? Why is my solution to this? And don't get me wrong, ranting and getting stuff off your chest, totally a good thing, right? But then what are your actions after that? It's back to the idea doesn't matter, the execution does. Mm-hmm. The complaint doesn't matter. What you're trying to do, the solution to that's what matters. And I found myself in that position. I found myself, honestly, looking, retrospectively or whatever, and I didn't like, that was like the first time where I was like, I don't like what I see. I complain. I don't do anything. I thought I was working hard. That's what it was.
And then you saw what people who were working hard looked like.
Yeah. And again, kind of the comparison
with
thing.
With the mindset too.
Yeah. The comparison thing I was making was I'm now hearing the comparison of here's these people that have found success or finding success actively, whatever. But I'm hearing these similar stories. I'm hearing that they had no money. I'm hearing that they were counting change. I'm hearing that they lost this family member and it was hard, or they were into drugs, or they were into whatever, and all these crazy things. And then I'm hearing how they're getting through them. So it was like, okay, it was this opening, the doors opening moment of like, it's cliche, but like the you're not alone moment, mm-hmm. right? Where you're like, other people go through this too. And again, whether it's in the specifics of freelance, entrepreneurial, whatever, or just life, it's hard to remember sometimes like everybody else goes through this too.
You're explaining like a huge part of why I wanted to start this, mm-hmm. because I'm like, even if it gets out to just the people that know me and the people that know the guests that have thought about doing things or that are trying to start things and having setbacks or things like that, or even just questioning even starting,
right?
It's like, if they can hear or see someone that they know that's already thought about it and went through all that stuff, and that says, hey, you just have to look at it like this. You just have to change your mindset. You just have to do what's right in front of you.
Yep.
Attack it. All that type of thing. That's when I start thinking like, oh yeah, I would love that. Even if this doesn't turn into something major for me and make me all this money or anything, but it starts changing lives because it does something like what that did for you. It changed your life.
Yeah.
It changed your life.
Literally. 100%.
Straight up. And that's what podcasts and things started doing for me. Yeah. And seeing my wife start businesses and do them did as well. So it was like hand in hand. That's what led to me wanting to do this, and then seeing Luis go too.
Right.
So it was like, okay, what if I can start talking about and showing people, but not only talking and showing them, especially because I haven't really started some, I'm then going to start something and roll with it, but also bring on people that have started something and went with it that are going to tell them, hey, you can do it too, because I'm just like, I went to the school you went to. I come from the small town that you come from. Yeah. I am a woman too. I am this nationality. I'm whatever. And then they can start to say like, oh, like just seeing it in the mirror, basically seeing that reflection of like, oh, they're like me. Like you said, I noticed a lot of similar stories. Our first guest that we had on, Josh, that has this book here, mm-hmm. he was somebody I grew up with. And I told him like, when I saw what he was doing and then I saw him put out the book and stuff, it was just like, it was pounding me in the head. Like, I went to school with this dude. We played on the basketball team together. We did a lot of the same stuff. We had a lot of the same like mentalities and thought processes on things. And like, we hung around some of the same people and had some of the same girls interested in us. And like, it was so similar that I was like, man, he's doing so many things. Not to say that I'm like as intelligent as him or as driven or anything, but it's like, okay, those things that I just mentioned or other things, that's on me. I can get more intelligent ASAP by start taking in more books or doing more material, this and that, more things online. I can work harder. I can try more things like you talked about. I mean, a lot of things where I was like, oh, okay. So then that's when it just all started coming together. Like, man, what if I can start showing people that there are just everyday person that used to be your neighbor, person you went to school with, this, that, and this is what they're doing now.
Exactly. And that was, you know, again, like I can give a ton of credit to that podcast because again, I'm hearing the similar stories. I'm seeing that, okay, it's all possible. And just because, you know, these people are famous or have a lot of money or whatever, I'm hearing the real side of it, right? I'm hearing the details of that story and knowing that, okay, we were in a similar boat. So what that did is, you know, I learned all that stuff about mindset, and I learned that, like, again, that's when it really set in to where I was like, I control what happens to me. Again, yes, there are outside things that can happen, but I control it depending on how I react to it.
Right. With you saying Robin Big, it was funny that you said that too. I remember one of the first things that ever hit me in that kind of like mindset at all was watching the Fantasy Factory show and all that, and watching him come out with his clothing line and all that.
Yeah.
And seeing the shirt that he had that said "Make Your Own Luck."
Right.
And I remember seeing that shirt, and I was super young, but I felt like I was just getting to the point, like just transitioning from school to like adulthood, and I started noticing that like the people around me, a lot of the issues that they were having and the way their life was going in a lot of ways sometimes was because of their behavior or the things that they were doing, and or their money management or their relationships, a number of different things. And I was just like, oh, like some of what I'm doing is more so because I'm being more cautious of those things, thinking those things out. And I was like, oh, make your own luck because this, and it was like just something basic early on. Yeah. And then I would imagine, and because I haven't listened to a ton of it, but I would imagine Drama probably says a lot of his influence and stuff maybe comes from Rob and that mindset.
Well, and that's you know, a part of, I guess, the timeline that I didn't even touch on was like, you know, skate culture and stuff like that was huge in my life. You know, that was the thing that came up right before the band stuff did. Gotcha. Right. Like while I was still in school, like every day I was skating from the time I got home from school to the time I went to sleep. And then I'd go, or not even go to sleep, go inside when it's dark. And then I'd go play skate games on my PlayStation or Xbox or whatever. So, you know, that's the other cool thing when Robin Big and Fantasy Factory and stuff like that were shows. The thing that inspired me wasn't like these guys are doing wacky stuff or even like Viva La Bam and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so much like, yeah, I love the skateboard culture and I love that sort of side of things and all that sort of stuff. It was more so like, I'm seeing these people do whatever they want.
Look what they're doing.
You know, especially with Fantasy Factory, it's like, we're going to start this brand and that brand and this and that.
And then start doing things that they want to do that they would do as fun that are making them money, and that's their business. Like, that's the thing with him. And then with Rogan now, it's like unbelievable. Like, because with Rogan, like the numbers that he's pulling in now and the money, the amount of money that he's pulling in, doing what he wants to do. Like, he wants to have these conversations, do stuff with UFC and dabble in all the other things he's down with. And now he's even talking about anything else that he's doing. Like, oh yeah, we're going to maybe start recording that or doing something with that.
Stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Like, and then the stand-up comedy and stuff. And it's like, it's been interesting. The guy that we had on, Marcus Rainey, you should check him out, man. Okay. He in a way, that's what I've been thinking a lot about lately with what he's doing. He has a place that him and his wife have opened up out right beside the airport that they call the Flex and Chill spot, and they're all into fitness, and that's their thing. But now he's got like a fitness area in there. From the jump, they had like couches and desks and different things for people to come in there and work and do creative stuff. Yeah. There's photo setups, a bunch of little like backdrops and photo setups everywhere. Dope. This is all in this big ass factory that a friend of his is involved in some branding stuff and a clothing line, Lamp Apparel. Okay. And it's all in one building. But then just this weekend they brought in and now have a half size regulation NBA court, NBA, WNBA court in there. That's dope. But he's like, they're trying to do a lot of stuff that they're interested in, and then like kind of intertwine all this like collabing, you know what I mean? Like we talked about before.
Exactly. And that's like, I feel like even what pushed me further is like watching things like Fantasy Factory and all that. I'm like, they're doing all this fun creative stuff, but I'm still seeing like the business side of it and how they're branding things.
Right.
And so fast forward again, you know, I listened to that podcast, I figure out about mindset, And it literally like it flipped a switch. Like it genuinely, like, again, not to get all self-helpy, but like it literally flipped something to where like the next day I was like, I ran it all by Josh and I was like, here's what I'm thinking. You need to listen to this. Like, here's why. Here's everything that I'm feeling, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, he's like, okay, I'll have to check it out, right? And what it made me do was, like, look at things, like, more from the outside and, again, be like, well, what's happening and how can I react to it? Okay, cool. We have no work. I have no work. Well, maybe a part of what I need to do is stop relying on Josh to bring me work and only us do stuff together. Why can I not use skills that I've acquired? Why can I not do more work on my own? Why can I not actually be a creative and be a freelance? Because I feel like I almost got it lost for a little bit.
Oh, okay. Almost like you were just his employee to a degree.
Right. And more so like once you do find that little bit of like, I guess, quote unquote success, you can maybe sort of just start riding the wave a little bit. And then you almost forget like, oh, I kind of stopped working as hard as I should have been. Right.
And stop doing the things that got me here.
Exactly. So, and
Gotcha.
I think that might have even been a part of it too. But it's like half of it is like, maybe I got caught up and maybe I was just like, well, Josh and I collectively, we have work every couple months and it's enough to sustain this, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. But then we find ourselves completely empty and it's like, okay, well, what else can I be doing? So that's more so when I like, and I had been like shooting off and on, for the year or two prior to that. But it was always more so, I found myself in like a natural directing position where Josh was more of like the camera operator and that sort of stuff. So I had only done like small side jobs with the camera up to that point, but I was like, well, I have this skill that I'm not tapping into at all. Right. And so what more can I do with that? Instead of putting it all on his shoulders for us as partners to like, we have to do this. And if we're not doing it, then we're both sinking. It's like, well, I'm going to share this information with him, try and get him motivated to do whatever he wants. I'm going to motivate myself to do whatever I want. And I just kicked it into gear. So, I went through and I started making a list of like every, independent artist or band or whatever that I felt like I could work with. And then but I did more because, basically what I'm getting to is I ended up cold calling people, right? Cold emails, cold messages, all that sort of stuff. I have a love-hate relationship with that because it can be super salesy and fake. But what I did was I would look up people, one, that I knew I could work with, right? That I knew needed something that I can offer. And then I spent all this time researching these people and found out what exactly they needed. And only then would I reach out and be like, hey, notice, I'd love to rebrand you guys, or I'd love to, I noticed your last promo seems to be from 6 months ago. I'd love to book a new promo session, or your guys' music is rad. Would you, if you're ever looking, in the market for a music video, here's our portfolio. I'd love to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I also had a hate relationship with cold calling before that because of kind of what it feels very salesy. So we never would, right? Which is a good thing because it's like, oh, we had a natural, client cycle that we never had to cold call people. But then finally finding myself having to do it, I was like, why would I not? Why would I not just attempt to do it? Because if I don't get to this person to try and give them some good, creative, heartfelt work, they could just go pick up whoever who just wants their money real quick. And that's going to give them, for lack of a better term,
crap work,
crap quality.
Yep.
So I went through, made this list, broke it down, started hitting all these people up. And then I also planned, I was like, okay, like how can I get more photo gigs? So I was like, okay, well, I know that people within my network, and this is, I'll fully break down the plan here because not like it's mind blowing, but figuring it out was a bit of like this is kind of a learning curve.
Oh, okay.
So all I did was I looked at my network and I was like, okay, who were select few people that I could offer free photo shoots to? Given once they post my photos, who in their network is going to see it and then want to hire me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm just going to try that. So there was a select few people. And I was like, hey, I'd love to shoot, update you some stuff, but here's why I'm doing it. I want to shoot for you. So then when you're posting them, I want access to your network. Like I'm just be very clear that this is a business move, but it's also creative.
Hearing you say that honesty part of it, I think is huge.
I'm not like people in business and creative like act like there's all these secrets, and like, yeah, there's totally like the secret part is like how you learn to do it on your own, right? That's the secret part. Like, sure, I get it. Like, not everybody wants to share everything, but like, why not? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, honestly, anybody could share anything with anybody else, but that doesn't mean that they're still going to be able to do it the same way.
Yeah. Or they're going to give it the effort.
Exactly. You know, some amazing movie director or writer can sit down with me right now and be like, you want to be a director? Cool. I'll tell you everything you need to make the best movie. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to pull it off.
Right.
So, secrets don't, in my opinion, shouldn't matter that much. But I did, I openly was just like, I want to do these photo shoots. This is the reason. I just want to grow, right? Be creative. And the crazy thing is that it worked. Once I gave these people these photo shoots and they were posting them, the plan actually worked.
So people with good engagement,
people, yeah,
and a good following,
people,
and
not even, yeah, and to clarify on that, like, not a huge follow. It's not like I was getting some social influencer who's like, what? It's just people within whatever network. But people then reached out to me and was like, hey, I saw the stuff that so and so posted you did. Like, that was rad. Can we book? Blah blah blah. And then I found and no joke. From that mindset change, from the putting my feet down and being like, I need to work harder, and thinking positively and reframing stuff, literally within a month of doing that and putting the work in, I found myself as a freelancer booked out like 2 months in advance. And like, then that carried on.
So it had to just been a kick to you, like, oh,
yes.
man, what I should have been doing this for this long, or I could have been doing this all along.
And it's something as simple.
I would have never had to call grandma.
Right, exactly. That's genuinely the thing. Like, had I been, and I get it. It's hard to look outside of what you're doing sometimes, right? It's hard to look,
absolutely.
In from the outside. But it absolutely was like, wow, I thought I was working hard before, or I thought positively before, because I've always tried to be a positive minded person. Gotcha. Right? Like I was never, even in high school, like I was never into the whole like, let's all rag on each other and make fun of each other. And I know that that's just people in general. Like you bust each other's chops in the friend group or whatever. I've never liked that, because honestly, I'd rather tell somebody like how great they're doing at something rather than make a joke about like the shoes they're wearing.
Yeah, I think that part, man, is all about like where you come up and the people you come around. Because it's weird too, like in different settings and me coming up in the city and stuff like that. That's what everybody did. I was never also like real big on it. Right. I did it for sure at times, but I was like, I always felt like I wasn't funny enough to really do it. Like I got to be careful because somebody's gonna roast me. So
that was my thing. It's like I never liked the roast culture. Gotcha. I'm not like. I don't care. Like, it's funny to be funny and poke fun and all that sort of stuff. But like, again, I'd rather sit and have this conversation than be like, dude, nice shirt, man. Like, dude, I don't care. That's because to me, even if you're joking, that's like negative energy.
Yeah. And I've seen people get hurt off it for sure too. I think it's funny for sure. Like, to me, the funnier part of roasting now is like when you see the actual roast on TV or the podcasts or skits or things that are based around it with other comedians where they know that's what they're getting themselves into and they're just going to fight fire with fire. Yeah. To me, that's the cool avenue of that now.
If I say hi to you and I haven't seen you in 2 weeks and the first thing you say is like, your face is the stupidest face I've ever seen in my life, get out of here. Instead of just saying like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, you're looking good lately, man. It's even better.
It's like, man, you're putting so much effort into like trying to be funny
tear somebody down. Yeah.
Just say hi back. You know what I mean? So I've always had that sort of outlook on like, hey, I'd rather be positive than be negative. I'd rather react to something in a good way than bad. But this time frame was like reaffirming all of that. Of like, okay, now I'm really going to kick in a mindset where it's like even changing vocabulary. Like, and again, I know that sounds like such a weird hippie, like cliche thing, but it's like, again, stuff I learned was just like, don't say like, I want to do that or I'm trying to do that. It's, I will do that and I am doing that.
It's something that has came up on here through the Bible, but it can be something nothing to do with religion. But it's like the power of the tongue and speaking something into existence.
Exactly. And so that was even another thing that I reframed my mind of like, with the photo shoots. Man, I'd like to book these photo shoots. I want to book these photo shoots, whatever. No, I'm going to book these photo shoots.
Yeah.
Because if you frame your mind that way, then, you hold yourself accountable. And if you can grow in that sense, like, okay, if I don't, then I'm letting myself down and I am failing and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, I'm going to book these photo shoots.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things that I feel like every time I start to talk about that and explain that to people, I feel like a lot of people are probably listening or looking at me like, dude, you're talking about magic, or you're talking about
totally.
What are you like? But I'm like, man, I wish they knew. I
Yeah.
wish they would try it or implement it a little bit, just to see how it goes, because that's how it was for me. Like I just tried, like, okay, I'm gonna implement it and see where it goes, and I did, and it started working, and I was like, oh, like you just don't realize because of, and I think it's beyond what people think it is with religion, or beyond it's those clicks that start happening in your subconscious.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of like, okay, like you said, just letting you know this is what I'm going to do now. And then making you think, like, when you're not doing it, it's in the back of your mind kind of hitting you and saying like, okay, you need to do that. You said you were going to, or you said this is where things are going.
Confidence is huge. And again, nowadays we could have a whole other conversation all about social media and what that does to confidence and all that sort of stuff. But like when you can sit and own what you do, or sit and say like, I am going to do this, or, you know, and that's something, again, just in the last year when all this mindset stuff started to kick in, you know, that's when I was actually able to do that, you know, because for so long, and I'm sure tons of people do this, you know, for so long when somebody would ask me like, oh, what do you do? Or, you know, what is this? Or, oh, I saw you take photos, or whatever. Like, hey, that was a really good photo. The reaction would be like, oh, no, it's not. Oh, whatever, you know, but own up to it. And if somebody's like, dude, I saw your work, it's really good. Dude, thank you. Yes. Like I work really hard to do good stuff. I'm not going to pretend like I don't want it to be good. And that's a thing of like, and again, me, like a big thing I want to do is I want to direct movies. I want to be a real writer, right? That's one of the things on the big to-do list. So now, you know, when I am directing videos and I am making short films and writing scripts and all this sort of stuff, if somebody asks me like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I'm a director. I don't have to be J.J. Abrams to be a director. I can be a director either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you have directed things, and it's like...
So it's like, well, yeah, I'm a director. Now I can explain to you the levels I'd like to get to and the things I'd like to do, but I am doing this, and I'm owning up to that. It's not I wish I was, because I am doing it.
Gotcha.
Same thing, you know, with podcasting. It's I do a podcast. Or, I take photos. I design. I whatever. Confidence is huge in subconsciously making yourself, even you, believe in yourself. Obviously, outwardly, that's the way everybody looks at it, right? Is I need to make this other person believe that I am this thing. But subconsciously, I feel like it's a way bigger thing, because you catch yourself being like, I am this thing.
Right.
And through that mindset shift is when I kind of caught myself of like, I am a freelancer. Wow, I am a photographer. I am a video director. I am a writer. You know, I can and am doing these things. So mindset shifts happen. You know, I get Josh on board. It's, you know, so we're both like, yes, you know, he starts freelancing way more by himself. I start freelancing way more by myself, which, you know, gets me more into shooting videos by myself and photos and all that sort of stuff, doing a lot more marketing with bands still. And then we get to the point in time, the big drop off, the theft situation. So that's why I said earlier that it came at this strange time.
Oh, okay. Where it's almost like it was meant for you to get that mindset shift.
Right.
In time for something like that to happen.
Because it's like we could have been down in the dumps, or we could have whatever, and it could have been the thing that pushed us over the edge, or it could have, should have, would have kind of thing, right?
Right.
But it happens like, I think that was like 4 months after we like have this like kick it into gear mindset shift. So we're like riding a high wave of like, we're busy, like we got so much work, like
chops the legs.
You're positive, I'm positive, yes. And then we're at a shoot, we come back out to the car, and all the gear's gone. So we're like, oh, like, okay. And to be honest, more from shock than anything, but we kind of just like sat there and laughed for like 15 minutes. Because we were just like, how is this real?
Yeah.
How is this real? Because what happens is like I go out to the car and we're telling the clients goodbye. Because we were doing, we do a lot of wedding photo and video stuff too. We were doing an engagement session. And so we tell the couple goodbye and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, grab the MacBook out of the case in the front seat. I'm going to put this with the other camera. Because that was like, it was one of the few times that we like actually got gear for like an engagement shoot. We had 2 cameras and all that sort of stuff. So we were doing photo and video. We go back to the car. He's like, yeah, grab the MacBook. I'm going to put this with the other camera and start breaking down, you know, like the steady cams and stuff like that we had. And I'm like, good joke. Like the MacBook's not up here. Like, where's it actually at? And he's like, So he's like, stop joking around. Like, I think he's joking. He thinks I'm joking. I'm like, it's not here. And then I'm like, wait, where's the other camera rig and all the other cases we had in here? So then it sets in that somebody stole all the stuff. We sit there, we're freaking out. He calls his wife, and again, we're just kind of like, wow. Like, again, we're laughing more than anything because we're just like, how does this happen?
Who would know what the hell to do in that situation?
Right. So, we figure out you got to call the cops, you got to wait for them to show up, you got to file a report, all this sort of stuff. And, we're sitting there, we do some math, figure out that it's like 12 grand worth of stuff that is now gone. Luckily, the positive part is like all the footage we actually had all the cards with us. So at least the footage wasn't lost from the shoot that day.
One bright note.
Yeah. And we just kind of sat there and we're like, wow, like this is awful. And it wasn't until like probably a week after where I think it wore off and like the hard part set in of like, why did that happen? Like 12 grand worth of stuff that we've been like, and I hate these hot words, but like we grinded and hustled for like the last X amount of years to get to this point where we can be these freelance creatives and try and build these cool lives for ourselves and help other people and do all this stuff. And then all of our stuff's going to get stolen. You know what I mean? Like that sucks. So it was kind of a week after where it hit like both he and I, and we both were like, we had a phone call. We were just like, we kind of just had to like sob to each other, and not like physically sob, but just sit there and be like, it's okay for us to complain about this.
Right.
It's okay for us to talk about how bad this sucks. Quick.
And at least vent and get it out like you said.
But where the mindset thing still stuck was, okay, we can look at this and be like, wow, this sucks so bad. Our lives suck. Everything sucks. Blah, blah, blah. We're done. But we were like, well, there's no turning back. We can't reverse time and go stop those people or person or whatever from stealing the stuff. So what do we do now? What's the next step and how do we work through it? So, it was like, a friend of ours set up like a GoFundMe or something like that, which was rad. Cause we didn't want to take that route at all. What we did was, we were like, let's work it off. Let's just
more motivation.
Yeah. Let's just tell everybody like, hey, we'll do some sales. We'll lower some prices on stuff, but book whatever with us so we can try and recoup this 12 grand. Like, it's not really a positive. It's not really, we're not actually even making money. It's just like, can we get this money back to buy the stuff back so we can keep creating? And, and the harder part is like during that time frame was finally when we were like, because outside of music videos and client work, there's, the writing side of me. There are so many ideas and so many things that I've been wanting to create. Different shows and skits and series and short films and all this sort of stuff. At that point in time, we literally had them on the schedule for like the next week.
Oh, okay.
And then we get all that stuff stolen. So then it's like, wow, we can't even make that stuff. But it was like, well, let's do what we can to get all that stuff back so we can do those things again. Like, let's not just push them off and act like we can never make that stuff happen. Because again, it's not what happens. It's a reaction to it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about the whole time you're saying it, that mindset, man.
Right. So, we try and book as much as we can. Luckily, like we saw how supportive our network can be, how supportive friends and clients and friends of clients and all that sort of stuff. Like a lot of people stepped in and were like, if you need gear for productions or whatever, you can borrow our gear. You can use it for this. Or clients were
That's
like, hey,
real cool, man. That's real cool.
we were going to hold off a couple months to book with you, but you know what? Let's do it right now because we can pull it together for you. And so, in the end of it, we didn't like perfectly recoup every single thing we lost. There's still stuff right now over a year later. Actually, I think the year anniversary was like a week ago at the time we're recording this.
Gotcha.
Oddly enough. But, and we still haven't recouped everything, and that was still a big loss. But, even the positives, like the gear we did end up rebuying, we purchased new versions of that gear. So we actually technically got upgrades because of how the years laid out of like, well, we bought that, that microphone for lav audio, lav mic. Cool. We bought that actually 4 years ago or whatever, but now there's a new version out that's just as cheap as the one before. So cool. We kind of got to upgrade some of our gear. So it ended up kind of being like a little bit of win for the stuff we did get back, just to chalk up, the positives list. But in the end, it was more so just a learning curve of like, well, okay, one, eyes in the back of our head now, wherever we go. But two, again, what can you push through? and what can you make it through? And there were so many people that were like, we thought you were done.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
Like, and there's a lot of people that were like, listen, like, we won't judge you if you quit. Like, just so if you guys need to hear that, like, nobody's going to hold you that accountable if you quit. And both he and I were like, we can't. Like, that's great to hear that, you know, you get that quote unquote blessing from the outside of like, listen, if you give up, no one's going to blame you. But we were just like, we don't want to give up. We can't, you know? And, you know, after that, it's like now sitting and still just like keeping that positive mindset and all that sort of stuff. Like, we worked it back off. And then this year we were able to start shooting the stuff we've been wanting to shoot forever. We've shot a couple short film ideas that I've had forever. We've shot a couple skit ideas that I've been sitting on. And like, we were just able to just make that stuff happen.
I think it shows you guys' love for it, man, and it shows that you enjoy what you're doing and that you're happy in it, man. Because I think that's where it would really ruin somebody. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If it's something that somebody's doing just because they think it looks cool, hey, I'm a video guy, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm a director, I'm a photographer, whatever, and something like that happens, I think that's the ones that then that's when it gets thrown away. You know what I mean? That's when it's like, yeah, I'm not going through this again, blah, 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 whatever. But when it's really something that you've dove into, you enjoy, you see a future in, you have more ideas in that you still want to do, and also having that mindset shift, it's all like, okay, yeah, now it's just another hurdle. It's just what we got to do. And in a lot of ways, it's amping up the grind time, like you said, with sort of cliche words, but it is what it is. Yeah. And I love to see that, man. I really do, because I feel like that's something else that I hope when people listen to these conversations, they're like, okay, yeah, like, I just went through something similar like that. Or if something comes up to me, I'm just going to remind myself of what I heard. And like, damn, I didn't lose 12 grand worth of stuff. You know what I mean? Right. So I love hearing that, man. But something that it makes me, since we talked about it so much, this also leads me to like, I really want to talk about the podcast stuff. Cause I'm like, okay, that's my lane a little bit. And that's where I really want to try to nerd out a little bit, or hear how you guys' beginning and how things have went in the places you've bumped your head there, and the setbacks there as well too. So about when did you get started, and kind of give me just a brief idea of what made you say it's go time on this, or this is what I want to do. So that, you know, like I said earlier, that was Matty McClellan, the guy I do it with. You know, I'd met him forever ago through bands, and then once we eventually lived together a few years ago, we realized we both had this like huge love for horror movies. And so what would happen is, you know, most days if we had free time and we were both at home and there was nothing going on, it was like, hey, do you want to come, you know, let's go chill and watch this horror movie, right? So we would sit, and what we'd find ourselves doing a lot is like, I think it's safe to say that there's a higher percentage of horror movies that are really bad than there are ones that are really good, right? For every like Hereditary that's great, there's, you know, the Sharknadoes or whatever, even if they're purposely bad, you know, whatever it is. You know, there's a lot more that are bad. So we would find ourselves sitting and kind of probably what anybody does realistically, like we're giving live commentary on it, right? Once we realize it's bad, we're like, oh yeah, walk in the room and do this. Okay. Oh, this character is going to do that. Really? You know? And so eventually it's kind of where when the creative side kicks in, I'm kind of like, okay, well, like, honestly, like, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I was like, you know, honestly, like, we're kind of funny, you know, like we can make some good jokes about this, and we love this enough that like we're kind of capable of making fun of it a lot. And so he and I started tossing around the idea of, you know, what if we, you know, podcasts are huge. What if we make a podcast about it? And I think we're coming up on, year 2 of doing it. We're almost at 2 years. But it just came from this natural, like, we joke about horror movies all the time and talk about how much we love them. Why don't we do that in podcast form? So other people who love horror movies, but also love making fun of them, they can listen too. And, you know, Matt's a creative guy. And again, we spent this whole podcast talking about how much I like creating things. And that was like another avenue that then allowed me to be creative in a different way, where a lot of the times it's a very serious creative. It's very heartfelt and passionate and all that sort of stuff. And not to say that podcast isn't serious, but it's not serious. But it's not serious. Right. It's a comedy podcast. Yeah, and I love that it seems like the more I've thought about it for you, is it seems like it's an outlet for you in a lot of ways, but also an outlet for you to be silly and do your thing. That's something totally opposite of what you're doing. Right. But also something that may, you know what I mean, as another avenue of something you're working on, a business venture, that type of thing.
It's 100%. You know, to me, it's all of those things. It's you know, it's another avenue of like freeing myself, and I can be a little bit stress free, and I can just make fun of these horror movies and do all this stuff. But it's absolutely a business venture too. You know, I want to make sure we have listeners. I want to make sure the branding is good. I want to make sure the content we're putting out on the internet is good. All that sort of stuff. And if it blew up and become the next Joe Rogan, just in a different form, great. Then that could be the thing that pops off, and then sick. I'll do that and then continue to check off my list.
Right.
But even with that, you know, like once we started doing it, you know, we wanted to take it seriously from the start. So we were making sure like, okay, let's get good audio.
Quality equipment.
Exactly. And I know I was telling you a little bit of the story off the pod, but, you know, he's a huge fan of the show Twin Peaks, which is a big, you know, horror thriller show, or was. So he built a replica. Anybody who knows about this will know what I'm talking about. It's there's a place in the show called the Black Lodge, and it's like this mysterious place. Like, I haven't even really watched the show. I just know it all secondhand from him. But you know, it's this weird mysterious place. It's got like red curtains for walls, and like a black and white floor, you know, lined floor for a floor. And so he builds a replica in his house. And kind of just for fun, also for like, you know, he's involved in music and stuff like that. So it was almost his own little office and studio. But then we were like, well, why don't we just do the podcast out of there? So then we're living the gimmick, right? We're doing this thing where we're like, hey, we're this podcast. We love spooky stuff. We love horror, but we're also doing it. Our studio is like actually, you know, a thing from a horror show. So we sit down, we do that. You know, he's deeper into audio stuff than I am. So he buys all the audio stuff. We set it up. And we just got started. So where like the more creative side kicks in is like, I can't just let things, and this is like both a blessing and a curse, I feel like, probably especially for anybody who works with me on things, is that I can't let something just be like a slight version of what it possibly could be. I'm like, how do we make this more? You know, so in general, the podcast could be, hey, cool, it's two, you know, nerdy white dudes who love horror movies, and we talk about the bad ones. Listen up. Hey, it's 2 hours every week, whatever. But I'm taking it, I'm like, okay, well, like, how do we really grow this? What can we do? Can we make how can we really accentuate our characters? How can we, you know, expand on who we are as individuals, and also use this vast, like, universe of horror? And how can we bring in pieces of that to make our show cooler? So, you know, again, we get the name, we start it. It's Poltergeist. It's a play on Poltergeist, right. Obviously. Mm-hmm. So we've got all that by default. We get cool artwork made for it, all this sort of stuff. We got the audio. We're off and running. Then after doing a handful of episodes, it's when my gears start turning of like, I already kind of feeling like I'm personally hitting my glass ceiling again, right? Because I'm like, this is fun, and I want to keep doing this. And it's not like we hit 1 million listeners week one, right? We still got to grow to get those listeners. But what else can we do? Because creatively, I'm already like, what's next? So this is where a lot of like the pro wrestling talk from earlier comes in. A lot of pro wrestlers, the characters that they're portraying on TV are kind of just themselves turned up to 11, right? Okay. So I mirrored that with the podcast. I'm like, okay, well, how can we be characters? How can we be just more than Ross and Maddie, two dudes sitting in a room joking about bad horror movies? How can we bring all this, make a lore, make a history, pull all the like creative parts of what makes horror? How can we bring that into our things? So we gradually started turning ourselves into characters. We're still Ross and Maddie. We still talk normal, but we turn the volume up to where we eventually started writing all this story, or all these different stories where, you know, we're openly just stealing from horror movies, but we're making it our own thing. So it's like one of the stories is that, and it spawned from something real, is that Maddie is actually an alien inside of human Maddie's body.
Yeah, I kind of picked that up a little bit in the ones I listened to.
Yeah. So what that spawns from originally is that when we first started the podcast, Matt wasn't the best at speaking. He's very like, he stutters a lot. He messes up words a lot. So the joke became like, oh, something's wrong with you. Like, that's why you can't speak very well, right?
Gotcha.
Then that turned into like, we watched, I don't know if you or Louise any of the listeners have ever watched the horror movie, it's like from the 90s or early 2000s, called The Faculty.
Yeah.
Or kind of like, it's kind of like that and mixed with like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like aliens come, take the human form, all that sort of stuff. So we did an episode on The Faculty, and then it's dawned on me, I was like, oh my God, let's just steal that for the podcast. So we, towards the end of that podcast and throughout, my character, I'm now putting 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, wait, everything that's happening in this movie with these human beings and the aliens inside of them, it's kind of similar to you. So then the big reveal is like, he's like, oh yes, I am actually an alien that is inhabiting your friend Maddie's body.
Gotcha.
It's both of our memories in here, blah, blah, blah.
And that's definitely a common theme in movies. And The Faculty is actually kind of a cool one, man, for real. Like, to me, like...
Oh, I honestly love The Faculty.
Oh, I do too. Like, it has some weird things and some silly shit to it. But at the same time, it's like, it's a dope movie,
yeah,
man.
It's easy to make fun of, but it's great. Yeah. And so, and like, another one was like, okay, well, how can we keep growing these characters? So, what is 8 out of 10 horror movies? Somebody's getting possessed, right? So we were like, okay, well, what can we do for, the Ross character? Okay, well, what if like I do this joke where like it was around like a Christmas time. So I was like, I want to really harp on the fact that like we're feeling the spirit of Christmas, right? Because that's a cliche thing that everybody says. So I'm going to sit and I'm going to harp on the fact that I'm really energized by the spirit of Christmas and all this sort of stuff. That turns into I'm actually possessed by the spirit of Christmas. So then that grows into...
I know a guy that's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's from playing the part, I will say it's not that fun.
I know a guy that literally lives that.
But, it grows more into like, okay, well, what other spirits can I be possessed by? And what other, we had a St. Patrick's Day episode. So I'm like,
okay,
why would I not be possessed by the spirit of St. Patrick?
Gotcha.
So it's, my character then becomes I'm susceptible to possessions and I'm got all these demons living inside me. And then that whole story arc actually leads up to our 50th episode, which is kind of a landmark thing. It's a cool milestone, right? We made it that far.
We were pumped for like 8 or 7 or whatever it was that said it's more than the average the average podcast dies at this, and once we pass that, I'm like, yes,
yeah, exactly. So like we're gearing up for. I mean, we were stoked on 25, so then we're hitting 50. So at this point in time, we're full characters. We've got all these different story arcs, all this sort of stuff. But the main story arc is, again, because I can't just let it be a normal podcast. And Matt's like, yes, let's be creative. So I'm like fully possessed at this point in time. And if anybody tunes into the podcast, like at this time, they'll be like, huh? He's fully possessed. So we're sitting there and, we're just playing these characters. I'm fully possessed. We're getting to episode 50. And the idea of episode 50 is like, okay, let's not make it an episode where we review a horror movie and add some skits in for laughs. Let's make a full, almost audiobook-esque cinematic episode where we do all the sound design. I wrote this whole script. So again, bringing in the storytelling aspect of what I want to do. Like, I'm like, here's the whole script. We'll lay it out. We'll do the voiceover audio work as if we're doing real voiceover stuff. And we'll just play out this like 45-minute thing. Might be weird. And if somebody tunes in for a real, us reviewing a movie, they might be a little upset. But the whole episode becomes this adventure where my possessions get bad enough to where Maddie has to knock me out. A portal opens in the Black Lodge because our lure now to the show is that we are stuck in the Black Lodge. It's not just a room in his apartment anymore, right? So a portal opens. He drags me through. He actually has to kill me and bury me in order to hopefully rid me of the possessions. We just ripped that from the movie Evil Dead. Like, that's not an original thing. And he does all this. We play all this out. I come back from the dead. I'm cured of all the possessions. Then we add in this whole scene where we like fight zombies because why wouldn't you want a zombie horde?
Right. Like, so you basically guys are playing up everything from every
and
shitty or good horror movie.
Yes. And we do it and like, we're free. Oh my God. Like we fought all these zombies within this. We pull in like video game stuff where like there's this big monster zombie, like the boss. Right.
Right.
It comes up, chases us back into the portal. We actually end up straight back in the Black Lodge. And we're like, I guess we just continue doing this podcast.
Okay.
So that, even me explaining it, I know how extra that sounds.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's going to be a lot of people like, what the...
Yeah, they're like...
Did he just say?
Yeah, exactly. And hey, if you're really confused and really interested, go listen to it. Episode 50 of Poltergeist.
Shameless plug.
But, and I totally understand how much I just rambled and, again, how extra that sounds. But even something like this comedy podcast where we're just like, again, two dudes making fun of horror movies.
There's an audience for it.
Right. And what more can we do? So now it's to the point where by no means is it huge, but people who know us or people who like have wanted to meet us if we're out at a show or, because we're still involved in the music scene and everything, people have came up and either wanted to meet us that we didn't know, which is a thing I never thought would happen, or they'll talk to us about it and be like, I love like when you were possessed and that thing happened, or all the jokes about Maddie being an alien are so funny, or the thing where you had like a ghost fly through your podcast studio. Like they know the lore.
Details. Yeah,
they know the stories. So one, that's a cool payoff.
Yeah, and a real cool feeling.
I know that it's just not going out into the void and no one cares. But it's also this like fascinating thing of like, okay, like it matters.
Right.
Storytelling is cool because it's one thing to sit and be like, hey man, I listened to the podcast. It's really funny what you said about that bad horror movie. But when there's that extra layer of detail of like, well, what does that mean? Or, hey, turning even, Maddie stuttering through an episode, we turn that into something deeper. And I think that all reverts back to everything that I ever looked at. How did they make this movie? What is the meaning behind this scene? Or in music, what is the meaning behind this song? Why did this person write these lyrics? What's the artwork supposed to mean? All that sort of stuff. I love when there's deeper layers to everything.
It makes sense too. And like I said, like I was thinking with all that you said there, it was making me think how like that's why I said it too. Like there's an audience for each part of that too. Like there's your audience that wants to just hear like what do you think of this movie? I thought it was pretty shitty.
Right.
What do you think of this movie? This is my favorite horror movie. But then there's also the people that like want to hear somebody act a damn fool on there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And get a good laugh because they had a long ass week and they just want to hear some shit about something that they're lightweight interested in, but also is going to give them a good laugh and kind of let them escape for a little bit. Yeah. So I think you adding in those other layers is like what we were talking about and like you were talking about with the wrestling, where it's like it appeals to different people once you start doing more inside of there. Yeah. And it's what makes me want to do more stuff with this as well. Like start bringing in different levels and doing different series of what we do here or what it's about to bring in those other people that could give a shit less about entrepreneurship or a positive mindset or coming from going through these hardships or whatever. So it gives me motivation too as well. And I was laughing at some of the shit I listened to today too. And I'm just like, it was just like you said, it was so ridiculous and so extra. There's like, I know there's people out there that this is their thing. Like this is what they want to tune in and listen to, because they can turn on the radio and hear some regular shit. They can go to a lot of the biggest podcasts and hear this type of stuff. Yeah. But what if there's people out there that are looking for this? They want to hear somebody that's as goofy as they are or has these same thoughts on these movies. Like, because you hear people talk about the bad horror movies all the time. I feel like oh yeah, you mean the one where everybody fucking walks into the same dark room and gets the same fate and all that. So it makes a lot of sense. But so early on too, have you guys stuck with the same stuff you bought from the jump? Is it the same? Have you tweaked? Have you?
In a strange way, yes. Okay. We still have the stuff that was purchased from the start, but that doesn't mean we haven't had issues. We've definitely did record a whole episode and noticed that it did not record.
Oh, okay.
We've done that a couple times. But again, the backup plan for that was if we couldn't have an episode that week, the next episode, we would make up some ridiculous haunted story about why we weren't around last week. So there was always a plan of like, well, how can we back this up? But doing a podcast like this, if you miss a release, you can't show up next week and be like, listen, guys, there's a ghost in the podcast studio. It pulled the wire loose.
So somebody invaded the guest's body last week and didn't show up. Yeah, that's not happening. It's not even an option.
We've got that freedom, that leeway there. But we've had those annoying hardships. And I mean, on the deeper side of it too, like, again, it's not huge. We honestly, it genuinely surprises me the amount of listeners we have accumulated.
What is it like? Well, I mean, that's because that was going to be one of my questions as well too. Like, what kind of attention are you guys getting in downloads and stuff nowadays?
Like
and listens and
hundreds and thousands and like numbers that I genuinely didn't think we would hit. We're not at like millions. Like we're not like a Joe Rogan. We're not even levels below that.
Right.
But to even look and see 10,000 downloads, that's honestly insane.
Yeah, that's how I felt just recently when our episode with Jessica hit 10,000. I'm like, 10,000. It just, I told my wife the way I explained it to her, I was like, I had hopes that certain episodes would eventually start getting
right
nice amount of attention, and I would really feel like we're getting somewhere that makes you really feel like you're making some noise or doing something.
Yeah.
And then, but I never really put an exact number on it. And then it was like the other day when I just happened to look at her episode, I hadn't looked in a little while, and it was at like $3,000 before I looked, and I was like,
yeah,
okay, that's cool, nice. I mean, thousands
that's
is awesome. It's still awesome.
Like if it's more than 10, I'm gonna be like, yes, like for sure.
That's awesome, man. But so when I seen $3,000, I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. I'm like, that's nice. Like, maybe that's like, I guess also because I kind of felt like maybe we're getting close to the ceiling. Maybe that's what it was. Because I felt like, okay, maybe that's getting close to the ceiling for that episode. Well, then don't pay attention for a couple of days. And then it was funny too. It was like, it was hand in hand with someone kind of saying something, like I told you, somebody close to me saying something negative about me doing this. Yeah. And then I look, and it's at like almost $8,000. And that's when it's like,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, you know what I mean?
Like, no, I've got the proof. Like, and not that I even need to prove it to that person. I can prove it to myself that you're not right.
Right. And even though I was already feeling like, hey, what you say isn't, I'm not doing this for you. It was never for you in the first place. Yep. And also like I said, the mindset thing has made me look at all that stuff like it's motivation. You know what I mean? It's motivation. Right. And I've also learned how to tell people directly too, like, you don't know what you're talking about. If you knew what you were talking about, I would take your criticism a little bit differently.
Totally. Yeah.
If you knew, or I respected the where it was coming from more so.
Yeah.
But so then I look, and it's at like 8,000 or close to it, and I'm like, oh man, like this is really dope. So then I share a post about it, say like, oh, this is really cool. Thanks, like so much to the fans and the people and the guests and all that, whatever. Right. And then randomly look at it again today, and it's over 10, and I'm just like, man, this is awesome. And that's when it really that's when I had the conversation with my wife, and I was like, I didn't really know what would be one of those first milestones of like a number that would make me feel pretty good. But it definitely feels like that now. Like it feels like, because I've heard and read different stuff on like when you can start really thinking about making the money off of it and trying to get pitching it to places that would want to advertise through you, or however, whatever route you take it, that where if it's like, if you got something you can show you had 10K, it's like, that's really something that you can say, I'm not just out here doing something like you said, that's just out there floating and that's it.
Right. Yeah. When you get those even small justifications, it's like, okay, there is a purpose to doing this, even though like at the end of the day, like, yes, it would be very hard if we were getting 5 listens an episode, but more than anything, like it's fun. Right. It's just fun to sit down and play these characters and then have these conversations and all that sort of stuff. And again, something you noted earlier is like absolutely correct. That's a different part of me that I get to feed into.
Right.
You know, yeah, like we've joked and stuff on this episode of this podcast, but it's been a very like, here's the deep, the creative, the positive mindset. If somebody went and listened to an episode of Poltergeist,
they're like, who the hell is this guy?
Well, I'm sorry, what? Like, what does he say? You know, but it's like, that's a whole different side of me that I get to feed into. So it's just fun. But it's also like a vulnerable side where I'm sure you can relate to this with this is like, even though, yeah, we're being funny, we're playing characters or whatever, there's that vulnerability that, okay, you're putting your art out there, just like anything. And so just like anything else creative, there is ups and downs with, you know, we've had those ups and downs with that podcast where it's like, why aren't our listeners growing by this much every month and only this month, you know, only this much, or, you know, oh man, why is this podcast huge and we're not, like, you know, you've always got those comparisons. You've always got that like detractor thought, right? Yeah. Of like, it's going to take away from what you're really doing. But again, keeping the mindset of, I'm doing it for me more than anything. I want people to listen and I want it to be this fun, enjoyable thing, but I want to do it because I want to do it and I can't.
I think that's one of the coolest things about the podcast is that that's what you can do is like, you can literally be talking or having conversations about things that you would, regardless whether there was a mic here or not.
Right.
I would like, so that's what I said in some of the first couple of episodes when I had the guests on is I was like, these are conversations that I've wanted to have.
Yeah.
regardless.
Yep.
And that now that I'm going to be able to record them, we'll hopefully get some cool shit out of them. People can get nice bits of information and things to use in their life or their business. Then even better. And I think that's why it's kind of started to pull the attention pretty soon, as well as the biggest factor being the quality of it, thanks to Luis, that it really looks this good. It sounds this, it's slowly sounding better and better. And everything looking so clean and so professional.
Right. And I mean, that's even the same thing. We touched on this pre-pod a little bit, but there's a secondary podcast that I'm wanting to start that is essentially just long form conversation like this, like short story long, where I'm like, I want to have as much of those conversations as I can too, because those are normal conversations that I love having. And that's another part of me that I want to tap into more. That's why when I found out like we were doing this, I was excited. It's not that I need to be like, I'll come on the podcast if there's 1 million downloads guaranteed. I don't care. Like, this could be your first one. This could be your tryout. If we can have this conversation, I am so down.
That's been one of the cool things about all the guests that have came on, is that's kind of what they've said. Because I was always surprised. Like, my thought was kind of what you just joked about, was like me pitching it to someone or talking to someone, would they be like, well, let me look and see this and that. And it's weird that like off the bat, almost everybody's been like, oh yeah, I definitely want to do it. Like sometimes not know much about it, but definitely after they've seen it, or if they've seen it a little bit before, then they're really on it. But a lot of times they're just like, yeah, if that's what it's about, count me in.
Right. And like I said, like that's, why I'm venturing into, a secondary podcast that is more so like this and focused on the creative side and the positivity side and the life struggle side and all that sort of stuff.
It's weird because it makes me think with you might have like a balance where you doing one that's so silly now kind of makes you like, oh, but I'd also like to be doing something where I can talk about some of the serious now, because I've went so far away. Because in the early, I'm guessing, but in the early on of doing it and stuff, you're probably thinking like, oh, this feels so good not to just have to be so serious and so business minded and this and that, whatever, even though it's still at play. Right. But to be able to get on there and be silly and let go. And I imagine like, it's funny, I was picturing like when you guys do your episodes and stuff, and then even thinking about talking to you. But mostly just listening. I'm always thinking like, man, after you guys get done, you guys have to just feel good. Like, damn, that was funny. That was silly. That was stupid. That was whatever. Like, but it just felt good.
Right. It lets a part of that out. Right. And again, it's even though it's feeding into still a business side of this and a creative side of me individually. And, I'm getting the storytell and I'm getting to still do all these things. It's just cool. There's another thing on the checklist that I'm getting to check off and accomplish. Right. And another podcast like this one is like, okay, I want to be able to do that too. I want to go and record Poltergeist and laugh a bunch and play these silly characters and say vulgar things that, only South Park would say or something. But then I also want to be able to do the podcast where I can sit and nearly be brought to tears by someone's life story.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then share that with other people who want to figure those things out.
Yeah, that's also like, those are a lot of what I want to get into is like, so I want to do something that I keep trying to reel Luis in. Like, man, come on, man, we got to do something on a regular basis, just me and you. Yeah. Even if it's something short, you know what I mean? Yeah. And because we have a lot of really cool conversations. He's involved in a lot of cool stuff now. And we got a decent amount of connections, and they keep growing with doing the podcast. But so I want to get on and talk about something on a regular basis with him. But I would love to get into the lane of getting some people on here talking about people, whether it be fighting through addiction, fighting through a crazy family, whatever, a lot of different issues that a lot of us deal with, you know what I mean? That doesn't matter where you're coming from, that it all is something that kind of relates to a lot. But then I like to get on here too and like talk sports or talk whatever, like is somewhat relevant of the times, and just give a raw opinion of it too, where I can be more, like you said, a more in-depth version of myself, but in that lane. So like I try to be as much of myself as I can here, but it's something that I think you kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. It's where it's like you still, when you're talking about something, whether it be positive business and that, you kind of change your vocabulary a little bit and the way you talk, just off of trying to be direct about things. You want people to know you know what you're talking about, your intelligence, a lot of different things that you're trying to put out there and make sure the message is right. And then I know, like, I feel like if once you can get into a lane where you do something where it's more like, oh, I'm just being me, or I'm just talking some shooting the shit type things, then that's when you can really be like, okay, I can really let loose, maybe even just be a little bit more silly or a little bit more cutthroat or whatever the case is. Well, and it's cool to add that in.
I think that like kind of what we've been talking about is like, again, just from my personal perspective, there are so many different avenues and lanes of things that I want to do. I want to be movie director. I want to be a TV series creator. I want to be writer of this. I want to make an adult comedy cartoon. I want to, make a comic book. I want to do Poltergeist. I want to turn Poltergeist into a show. Like, there's a ton of stuff, but I also want to have creative conversations. I want to have positive, uplifting conversations. I want to do, hold seminars and teach people about things, or even if it's just positive thinking. Like, I want to create in so many different things. So, and something you're talking about is like figuring out how to do that and understand that you can shift yourself into those different lanes. Something that I feel like society has said for a long time is that you're not allowed to do multiple things.
Right. You're stay in your lane.
Yes.
That stay in your lane thing, like, it's weird because I feel like I used that term or thought in that term a lot for a little while. Mm-hmm. And then now I feel like that's one of the dumbest things, stay in your lane. It's like,
right.
Or I get the overall aspect of it, of like, don't try to comment, take somebody down, or try to do something at the top level that you have no idea what you're doing.
If you're going to use it negatively, then don't do
it. Right. But I also now feel like, man, staying in your lane also is a lot of ways like limiting yourself.
Right.
That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, and the more I've grown up, the more I've matured, the more I've understood, the more I've been through all that sort of stuff, I've realized that, like, there's nothing, and I think we said this earlier, like,
out of the reach.
You can do anything. And I get that you can do anything, but you might have a lot more roadblocks than somebody else.
Right.
Totally. That's the realistic part.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do anything. And I want to be able to do anything. I want to do comedy here. I want to do serious stuff here. I want to do artsy stuff here. And so, like, I don't believe in the whole, like, well, you should pick one thing and you should put all your efforts into that. Because I believe that if you truly want to do these things bad enough, you can still put 100% into everything you want to do. Because it's not like you're trying to do them all at once. You know what I mean? That's how, like, when my mindset shifted of, how can I work towards all my goals? It was, well, I can do all these things and I will, but I'm going to make sure that I'm taking some sort of tiny step every day towards one of them. Even if it's, I want to be a movie director. Okay, well, I can't go out today and create an entire movie, unless I shot it with like iPhone or, there's so many variables, right?
Right.
But I can write one more sentence on that script. I can write down that paragraph overview of a movie that I thought of yesterday.
It falls into my thing of be a little bit better every day, man.
Yes, and that is still progress. And I think people get caught up on, if you don't have the physical, you don't have like the immediate gratification of like, I did this, then they think they're not doing it. Where it's like, nope, I can work with bands, and even if that means I sent an email to a band today about working together, sick, checked it off the to-do list for today. I wrote that overview for a short film, a movie, a skit, whatever. I went and recorded the Poltergeist podcast, or I wrote down a skit that I want to do on a future episode, or it doesn't, the thing can be endless. Whatever it is, you can do it if you can put a little bit into it every day.
Yeah,
it
and
does
I feel
not
like
have to be huge.
I understand people's mindset of saying, or the thought process of go hard at this one thing, because if you are to give something a ton of your attention like that, it is more likely to be successful.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, man, how are you limiting yourself from the possibilities of something else jumping off like in a major way for you? You know what I mean? Something else really clicking and skyrocketing.
Right. And that's the weird thing. And I, obviously, I guess there's no scientific way to prove this, maybe, but
my guess would be, man, it probably falls into the personality. It probably falls into like, are you the person that needs to be hyper focused on one thing, or are you the person that needs multiple things to keep you interested?
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's those people, and I've noticed that. So like we've had that's something that I've picked up along the podcast, and then when you start saying this, clicked even more. There's people that have came on that have said, once I like decided this is what it is and go at this, then that's when it happened. But then there's been other people that's like, if I do that, I get bored and I'm like, okay, what am I doing next? And I might just let something go that could turn into something because I'm like, I'm bored with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think from my perspective, like, I'm a person who is like, cool, I can give 100%, whatever that is, to one thing. But I also feel like I can still give a daily 100% to 10 different things.
Right. There might be more in the tank.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I can sit and focus on multiple things, and totally. I know people. I know you probably know people that, one thing at a time, one thing on the plate. I cannot even think about what I'm doing 6 months from now creatively, or if I don't finish this one song right now, I cannot think about the 30 seconds of another song.
Yeah, and they don't feel like they're giving it their all if they don't sometimes. Sometimes
Right.
they have that. Like, they're just like,
Right.
I need to go at this, because if not, this is not going to be my best work. I'm not going to put out the final product that I want it to be.
Right.
And it makes sense.
And I think the simple answer to that is, like, obviously whatever best suits you, whatever you're doing, feed into that.
And I think that falls into everything. Sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like that falls into everything, man. That's been a common theme of this podcast too. It's like, there's so many differences in everybody. That's why I like that I'm bringing on different guests, and this isn't just a podcast that me and Luis decided to do, and it just be us talking and giving our opinions.
Right.
Because some of the people come on here, people will be real interested when they hear the previous episode that's getting ready to release of this, where the guy that came on talked a totally different tune when we got down to some of the questions that we end and wrap up with, that I'm like similar to ones I'm going to go through now.
Yeah.
And it's like his just went left from from anything some of our other guests have said. Yeah. And I was like, at first I was kind of like, man, I don't know how much I like that, this and that, but I was like, man, there's somebody that feels that same way.
Yeah.
There's more than somebody. There's a bunch of people that probably listen to this podcast and are yelling like, it ain't that fucking easy, or it ain't this, or it ain't, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, or it's not all this, and you guys have never had this and stuff like that. So I get it.
Right.
But it also reminds me, so we can get right into it with the last couple of things. Give me a little bit on what this, I guess, like a little bit of how this whole journey is to you. And it sounds like you've already answered this, but like, I feel like there's no specific definition of success for you. You know what I mean? I feel like yours is just like, you want to try more things, go at more things, this and that, and see where it takes you. And I love that you have that mindset. But then also, what do you say to the people that are kind of thinking about going into something in your lane or starting something in general? I know we've said a lot of that already, but if you had to say it specifically in your words,
of like sort of like advice and opinion.
So first, like I said, just kind of, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you really would say is your idea of where success is for you, or do you feel like you kind of have a piece of that already with the happiness that has came to you? Or is there a certain place or level that you want to get? And then going into that advice, or just like, what do you say to somebody who's doubting themselves trying to start, or thinking like, man, where do I even start?
Yeah. So the first part of like, what success is for me, or what I see that being a success, is like, honestly, like, yes, I've totally found like a portion of it, and I'm not going to pretend like I can't ignore the success, whatever level of it that I found, right? Because I think it would almost do it an injustice, or almost do anybody else who's trying to do it an injustice, of acting like, oh, I'm so not successful. I'm freelance. I work for myself. I'm able to start my own brands. I'm able to have these creative thoughts and have these outlets, and I've made that, right? I think my ultimate form of success is, like, genuinely, like, in the most direct way I can explain it, is something I do reaching like the real pinnacle, right, of what we really look at as success. The flashy lights, the big name, all the listeners, the followers, the whatever, right? I write a movie, it becomes the next big Hollywood movie. I write, the Poltergeist podcast becomes the next big comedy podcast, whatever it is, right? The normal form of success happens, but my true success won't be like the money or the fame. It will be, okay, now I have this level of whatever that society says I have. I now get to use that to spread a positive message and probably say the exact same things I've said today on this podcast, just on another one at another time.
And to a bigger audience.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's my personal ultimate form of success is, of course, making a big movie, making a big whatever, but then gaining that platform to be able to give back to whoever wants it or whoever needs it, and show people, hey, there was nothing that said that I should have done this, but here I am. And that's not a brag. That's a proof to you that you can also do this. So that's, why I would want any of that sort of success, like that type of success or that platform, is to sit and be like, of course, now I can create whatever I want, right? Now I can make this movie, but then I can make this series and this and this and that because I have this value. That's
society dope, man. That's dope, man. It makes me really happy that I brought you on, because, that's kind of the theme that I, like I said, picked up this, and that's what I hope as well, too, is like when people start to gain that level of success is that's what it makes them want to do, is try to spread the knowledge at least.
Yeah. And that to me would be my ultimate form of success.
Gotcha.
And so piggybacking off that to the second part of the question is, what is it that I would tell anybody who is trying to do this or wants to start their own thing or has nowhere else, nowhere to go? It's kind of everything we've been talking about this whole episode. It's the cliche, it's the funny Shia LaBeouf meme of him flexing saying, just do it. That's what it is. And to me, the hard thing about that is that I don't look at that as a funny meme or a funny joke. I'm like, yeah, it's silly what he's doing and the way he looks, but yes, actually, just do it. Just go and try. And then if you fail, know that you can try again. That's my biggest thing, is that anybody who wants to start a brand, a company, a podcast, become a stand-up comedian, be a pro wrestler, be a movie maker, anything, just do it. Just go and try to do it. Give it your all, or give it whatever percentage you can. Learn the craft, learn everything, learn the ins and outs. You know what I mean? Like, do what I did with pro wrestling and learn the ins and outs of, well, why does that person play that character? How did they learn to wrestle? How did they learn? What does this story mean? Go into the DVD commentary and listen to how those things were made. How did they shoot this scene? How did this character arc happen in this story? Throw yourself at whatever you're wanting to do. And when you fail, not if, because you're going to, because I have failed in so many ways and doing so many different things. But the goal is to keep going and just get back up and just keep doing it until you find whatever it is you're wanting to do.
Yeah, I think the two common themes of everything you've said this entire episode is what you say again there that makes so much sense. And it's that part of just doing it and just going, but also on top of that, the details and all that. Like, so I kind of wrap that into one, like you say, just go and do, and but also while you're going and doing, don't just look at that final picture. Try to find out the details and really learn about what you're trying to get into. But then that mindset, that when it doesn't go that route, or you all of a sudden aren't overnight celebrity in what you're doing, or overnight just raking in the money, realize that it's on you. Right. It's our responsibility to make what we're doing successful. It's not anyone else's fault. Yep. That it isn't clicking, or that it isn't getting the attention or the money that we think it deserves. Right. It's like, throw that idea out the window. It's how much harder can I work? How many ways am I forgetting or unaware of that I could be doing this? I could be working harder here. I could be trying this. I could be doing the most basic, like you talked about, of cold calling or this and that, that might change my life. Right. Or picking up a podcast and listening to that and looking at it further than these two people are talking about whatever. I love it, man. I love it, man. This was awesome. And hopefully we'll do this again. And yes, I'll be real interested to see your other ventures, especially in the podcast realm, because of course that's my thing. Well, so, I mean, for sure, you're going to come on my podcast for sure. Okay, awesome. We're doing another episode for sure. Sweet. I appreciate it for sure. Yes. Okay, we'll give everybody an idea if someone does want to find you, where they can find you or your work online, or whether it be, like I said, all the directing and all that type of stuff, as well as the podcast and all that. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm one of those people that's very simple. Like, my Instagram is my live portfolio, right? It's a living portfolio. So Instagram is just at Who's Ross Theissen. Theissen is spelled Theisen. It clearly does not look like Tyson. Right. I for sure thought it was Theisen. Everybody, when you said Tyson, I'm like, okay, I got him now. Ross Theissen. Yes. Yeah. Everybody Tyson thinks it's Theisen. But yeah, at Who's Ross Theissen looks like Theisen. I'm that on Twitter. If you're active on Twitter, I'm that on Instagram. That's where all the cool stuff gets posted. If you want to listen to the other podcasts, you're into horror or comedy, or just want to hear the stupid side of me, Poltergeist podcast is where you can hear all that. And yeah, I mean, I think that covers like all the bases. Do you guys have before we wrap up too, do you guys have any kind of social media account for it, as far as like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? So it's on Facebook. We just kind of made the Facebook just by default to have one. We never actively use it. We don't have an Instagram at all. We put all our focus into Twitter, and just kind of, because I feel like Twitter is where all the comedy is right now. Like that's kind of how you can just post whatever you want and whatever.
But the Twitter is at poltergeistpod. So that's poltergeist pod. That's like our only active social media if you want to check any of that stuff out.
All right, sweet, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and we'll do something again.
Yes, 100%. This was a blast.
All right, man. Cool. Let's get out of here.
Thanks, man.